Chapter 252. Haha, everyone, this is merely a slip of the tongue. That's all. Haha, there are at the very least dozens of half-emperors present. There are also many people who are stronger than me. Even if I, Li Gan, am extremely daring, it is impossible for me to use all of you as a tool. Haha. After a long while, Li Gan looked at the half-emperors behind him with an embarrassed smile. A seemingly sincere smile appeared on his old face as he tried to cover up what he had done. Of course, these half-emperors weren't stupid. They naturally knew what was right and what was wrong. They also knew how much of Li Gan's words were true. However, most of the half-emperors couldn't be bothered to dwell on this issue. After all, they were here for the Void Lightning Pool invitation. As for Li Gan's intentions towards Xiao Yan, they didn't want to bother too much about it. In fact, Xiao Yan had nothing to do with them. These half-emperors had only looked for Xiao Yan because of the Void Lightning Pool invitation. If they didn't want to be related to Xiao Yan, it was only because of the Void Lightning Pool invitation. However, this wasn't enough to be a reason for them to kill Xiao Yan. Moreover, Xiao Yan was the chief alchemist of the Alchemist Association. He was also related to the Union Pavilion, and was the champion of this year's Alchemist Grand Meeting. He could be said to be a famous person. Many people wanted to befriend him for the sake of an Emperor-grade complete elixir. Naturally, these half-emperors didn't dare to make an enemy out of Xiao Yan. Moreover, even with the current situation, it was likely that there were some amongst this group of Band D experts who wanted to befriend Xiao Yan. In the southwest border, an alchemist who could refine an Emperor-grade complete elixir had not been seen for a long time. Now that there was one in front of them, they naturally didn't want to offend him. Humph. Since that's the case, you can leave. The old man, who was the second to speak, glanced at Xiao Yan before looking at Li Gan. His tone was indifferent as he spoke. Hearing this, Li Gan's emotions naturally relaxed a lot. Although he also knew that his words just now were not enough to win the trust of these people. As long as he could say this at this moment, his goal could be considered to have been achieved. As the old man spoke, the half-martial emperors that surrounded Li Gan moved aside, creating a path that only one person could pass through. Among the half-step emperors present, the two half-step emperors before Li Gan could be considered as the strongest. Since they had spoken, there was naturally no need for the others to continue speaking. Wait! The indifferent voice slowly spread out. This time, everyone turned their heads to look. Immediately, they could not help but frown slightly as a strange expression appeared on their faces. Because the person who spoke was actually Xiao Yan, who had not spoken since the beginning. Xiao Yan lifted his gaze. His indifferent eyes stared at Li Gan, who was about to leave, as a brilliant flame danced in his eyes. Li Gan also looked over in response. When he saw that the person who spoke was Xiao Yan, a strange expression immediately appeared on his face. He did not expect that Xiao Yan would still hold on to him at this moment. Could it be that he really wanted to fight with him in front of so many people? What? Yan Xiao, you still want to fight? If that's the case, this old man doesn't mind playing with you. Although Li Gan was extremely afraid of Xiao Yan in his heart, he was after all in front of so many people. This old face of Li Gan's was still able to hold on. He believed that in front of so many half-step emperors, Xiao Yan would definitely not dare to go overboard. After all, if Xiao Yan continued to use that ruler technique Do skill, even if Li Gan ended up being seriously injured, Xiao Yan himself would definitely become extremely weak. In this current situation, once Xiao Yan became weak, his storage ring would definitely be crazily snatched by the half-step emperors. At that time, it would really be troublesome. Li Gan was confident that Xiao Yan would definitely not put himself in such a situation for him. This was also one of the reasons why Li Gan had coldly laughed and retorted after hearing Xiao Yan's words. The battle between us hasn't ended yet. How can I let you leave? Since you've made up your mind to harm me today, then you'll stay here. Xiao Yan's eyes narrowed. His tone was extremely indifferent. The iciness within his words caused one to feel a chill run down one's spine. Li Gan's eyes were also staring intently at Xiao Yan. His throat involuntarily rolled a little. This caused quite a number of half-step emperors present to feel a little surprised. Although they had heard of the first battle between Xiao Yan and Li Gan when he had just arrived at the ancient savage city, Xiao Yan had relied on the strength of his Do skill to suppress Li Gan with an absolute advantage. Only with old Luo's help did Li Gan admit defeat. However, Xiao Yan had not used that Do skill and old Luo had not appeared. What was this Li Gan afraid of? Yin Xiao, sometimes you can't be too full of yourself. Otherwise, you will feel even more pain when you slap your face. Meaningless arrogance will only harm you. Li Gan seemed to be giving a kind reminder. The seals in his hands changed and waves of frightening Do Qi pressure spread from his hands, causing the surrounding space to tremble intensely. Only at this moment, with the support of the Do skill in his hands, did Li Gan finally feel that his heart was able to calm down. He had truly witnessed Xiao Yan's strength. When facing him, he definitely could not treat him as an ordinary half-step emperor. I remember that each time you are unable to defeat your opponent, you seem to like to use self-destruction to threaten your opponent. Am I right? Xiao Yan's words were once again transmitted. This time around, it was not only Li Gan. The surrounding half-step emperors also frowned slightly. They exchanged a couple of glances with each other. In their hearts, they felt that Xiao Yan's words were strange. Wasn't it a little arrogant to say such words before the battle had even begun? Swoosh! At a certain moment, a bone-chilling cold wind blew in the sky. Everyone felt that it was incomparably strange in this clear sky. Only Li Gan, who was standing opposite Xiao Yan, immediately revealed a shocked expression the moment the wind sounded. The Do skill in his hand did not hesitate as it violently smashed toward the space on his right. Coiling snake palm. A stern cry sounded. In the next moment, Li Gan's shriveled palm violently smashed into the space on his right. At the same time, a black-robed human figure suddenly appeared in the invisible space. From the looks of it, it was undoubtedly Xiao Yan. Bang! Xiao Yan, who had appeared from the right side of Li Gan's body, did not hesitate at all. His white hand was opened and thrown forward. A black-colored light circle swiftly spread out from his palm. The black-colored light circle that was filled with a devouring strength violently collided with the palm that was heading toward him. However, just when everyone thought that an exciting fight would occur, Li Gan's palm, which was filled with a powerful aura, actually forcefully scattered Xiao Yan's great heaven creation palm. This scene caused everyone to be stunned. Even Li Gan himself could not help but feel stunned at the strength of Xiao Yan's palm. He had never expected that with Xiao Yan's strength, it was possible for him to only unleash a strength of this level. However, in the next moment, Li Gan's eyes suddenly narrowed. The gaze with which he looked at Xiao Yan with was as if he had seen a monster. 1-star half-martial emperor. How is this possible? The strength of Xiao Yan before him had merely reached the level of a 1-star half-martial emperor. At this moment, the surrounding half-martial emperors were also stunned by this scene. They were truly unable to understand how Xiao Yan, whose strength had been at the peak of a 3-star half-martial emperor earlier, had suddenly become a 1-star half-martial emperor. Before the astonished words in his heart could finish, the expression on Li Gan's face suddenly changed again. The Xiao Yan in front of him actually revealed an extremely strange smile to him. That smile finally caused his heart to feel a deep uneasiness and fear. Chapter 253. Boom. A frightening Do Qi storm swept forth. At this moment, the group of half-martial emperors in the sky all had grave expressions on their faces, as they rapidly retreated 10,000 feet. They stopped and looked at the center of the explosion. The fear in their eyes was not concealed in the slightest. There was still lingering fear in their hearts. Dead is he dead? The half-martial emperor who spoke earlier revealed a fearful expression as he looked at the center of the explosion. Although the afterglow of the explosion caused the majority of the people to be unable to clearly see the situation within. As a 7-star half-martial emperor, he was able to vaguely see some things. With a glance, he saw that the center of the explosion had already turned into an endless void. The frightening energy storm formed a vortex in the void that devoured everything in the world. Other than a blurry human figure, he was unable to see anything else. Looking at his aura, although he was weak, he was still barely alive. That explosion was unable to forcibly kill him. Sigh. It seems that he is really dead. But why would he self-destruct for a single Li Gan? Someone like him shouldn't do such a stupid thing. Another half-martial emperor revealed a doubtful and regretful expression in his eyes. His gaze was also looking at the center of the explosion. The bright and resplendent radiance caused one to be unable to directly look at it in the daytime. He actually self-destructed. Has that Yan Xiao gone mad? For the sake of killing a single Li Gan, he actually self-destructed. Isn't this equivalent to throwing away his life in vain? Sigh. It's a pity that an exceptional genius would end up dying in such an unwillingly manner. It's truly not worth it. Just a moment ago, they had personally witnessed Xiao Yan being defeated by Li Gan after a fierce collision. The gap between a 1-star half-martial emperor and a 6-star half-martial emperor was ultimately too great. As for Xiao Yan, he seemed to have made a final gamble. In his final attack, he directly self-destructed. He wanted to use his own life as the price to kill Li Gan. Unfortunately, in the end, he was only able to seriously injure Li Gan. He was still far from being able to kill him. Cough, cough. After coughing twice with great difficulty, blood continuously flowed out from the corner of his mouth. His heavy body fell from the sky and violently smashed into the street below. At this moment, Li Gan only felt that even breathing was a form of pain. Although he wanted to exhale, the slightest movement of his body would cause his organs to feel a tearing pain, making Li Gan feel extremely pained. Although the injuries on his body almost took away half of Li Gan's life, when he thought about how Xiao Yan had sacrificed himself to get this, Li Gan felt a sense of satisfaction in his heart. Haha, Yan Xiao, you didn't expect this, did you? You self-destructed your cultivation to kill me, but in the end, it's still a fight to the death, ha 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 ha. Li Gan thought to himself excitedly. At this moment, everyone in the sky looked at each other with different expressions. Initially, they had thought that they would have a chance to obtain the Void Lightning Pool invitation. But now, before they could even make a move, Xiao Yan had died first. Wasn't this just a waste of time? Swish. However, just as everyone was shaking their heads and sighing, a gust of cold wind suddenly blew in the sky. This gust of cold wind caused everyone to feel a trace of strangeness. The few 7-star half-martial emperors in the crowd could not help but frown. Li Gan, who was already seriously injured on the ground, instantly tensed up when he saw the gust of cold wind. This gust of cold wind was the abnormal sign that appeared when Xiao Yan used the sky annihilation steps. How is this possible? He had clearly self-destructed. It's impossible for him to still be alive. But this is... PFFF. Before Li Gan could react, a black cloaked figure suddenly appeared before his chest. When the figure appeared, it did not stop and ruthlessly stomped on Li Gan's chest. Immediately, blood spurted out like a fountain and stained the black cloak, causing its color to appear even deeper. Li Gan's mouth was blurred. He wanted to say something, but the enormous force that came from his chest interrupted his thoughts. There was no need for him to speak. Heh, did you really think that I would be stupid enough to self-destruct with you? Someone like you is not qualified to do that. Xiao Yan spoke with an indifferent tone. The gaze with which he looked to Li Gan was filled with disdain. How did I not die? Xiao Yan sneered. The expression of disdain in his eyes grew even stronger. It's very simple. That's because the thing that self-destructed was not my actual body. After Xiao Yan said those words, Li Gan's eyes immediately narrowed. He immediately came to a realization. No wonder Xiao Yan was only a 1-star half-martial emperor when he fought against him earlier. He had deliberately held back in order to toy with him. Never would he have imagined that the person who ended up being toyed with would be him. At this moment, the crowd in the sky also discovered Xiao Yan below. Their eyes immediately shined. Never would they have imagined that Xiao Yan was still alive. Since that was the case, it meant that there was still hope for the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation. No matter what, they would definitely not give up on it so easily. Xiao Yan raised his head. When he saw the half-martial emperors flying toward him, a smile appeared on his face. He knew that they would not give up so easily. However, to him this was not important. After all, these people would not be able to do anything to him. Lowering his gaze, Xiao Yan stared at Li Gan. He lowered his body and slowly placed his palm on Li Gan's chest. With a soft smile he said, "Let me tell you one thing. The number of 7-star half-martial emperors that have died by my hands can be counted with one hand." After Xiao Yan said those words, Li Gan's pupils suddenly shrunk to the size of a needle. At the same time, Xiao Yan's palm trembled slightly and he withdrew it. At this moment, all of the internal organs and meridians within Li Gan's body, including his heart, were shattered inch by inch. The weak aura coming from Li Gan's nose had also been completely cut off in the sky. The two seven-star half-martial emperors stood motionlessly as they looked at each other. All of Xiao Yan's actions had been seen by them. Naturally, they had also seen all of his methods. Let's go. It's better to find someone else. I will not get involved in these muddy waters. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. After that, they left. After all, they were half-martial emperors. Although everyone was different and would always be blinded by greed, there would always be people who were farsighted. Such people would usually be able to walk further on the path of cultivation than ordinary people. Xiao Yan shot a glance at the two who had left. A strange expression flashed past his eyes. After that, he turned his gaze back to the group of half-martial emperors that had gathered once again. Haha, this is truly unexpected. Mr. Yan Xiao, although I do not know what sort of methods you possess to be able to deceive all of our eyes, since you are still alive, it will save us some trouble. As long as you hand over the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation, we will let you go. We will definitely not make things difficult for you. After these words were spoken, the other half-martial emperors nodded in succession. At the same time, they surrounded Xiao Yan in the middle of the crowd, leaving Xiao Yan with no way out. Hearing this, Xiao Yan raised his eyebrows slightly. His gaze swept across the group of half-martial emperors. The corners of his mouth lifted into a cold smile as he said, "Sure. Just hand it over. After all, there are more of you." Even though his words were unpleasant to hear, the crowd did not expect Xiao Yan to actually agree so straightforwardly. From the looks of it, this process would be much easier than they had imagined. However, just as the crowd was rejoicing over Xiao Yan's words, Xiao Yan opened his mouth once again and gathered the crowd's gazes onto him. There are so many half-martial emperors present, but I only have one Void Lightning Reservoir invitation. May I know who I should hand the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation to? How could these half-martial emperors not know that Xiao Yan was clearly trying to drive a wedge between them? He wanted them to fight amongst themselves and form their own camps. At that time, no one would have the chance to obtain the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation from Xiao Yan's hands. Yan Xiao, there is no need for you to worry about this. As long as you hand over the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation obediently, we will distribute it. As for you, you can leave on your own. But what if I say no? Xiao Yan smiled faintly. His face was filled with a calm expression. Yan Xiao, do you really want us to attack you? We respect you as the chief alchemist of the Alchemist Association, and as the champion of this year's Alchemist Grand Meeting. This is why we are so polite to you. Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Bang! A thought passed through Xiao Yan's mind, and the Northern King immediately appeared. He stood beside Xiao Yan. When his feet landed on the ground, they created a large pit that was several feet deep. When the Northern King appeared, an overbearing aura suddenly spread out, causing everyone who saw it to reveal a grave expression. The expression of the person who had spoken earlier suddenly changed at this moment. The words that he was about to say were forcefully stuck in his throat. Chapter 254. The Void Lightning Pool invitation is with me right now. Since you all want it so badly, if you have the ability, come and get it yourself. If you don't have the ability, please step aside. I still have things to do and I don't have time to waste with you all. Xiao Yan had a cold smile on his face as he spoke with an indifferent tone. The appearance of the Northern King had clearly caused these half-martial emperors to involuntarily feel some fear in their hearts. Even the person who had spoken earlier had a grave expression on his face. Although he was a 7-star half-martial emperor, the pressure that the puppet before him gave him was not the slightest bit weaker than other half-martial emperors of the same level. If they were to truly fight, it would likely be very difficult for him to gain an advantage over this puppet. Damn it! Why is this puppet as troublesome as its master? Its true strength has surpassed its own cultivation. This half-martial emperor cursed in his heart. However, he felt extremely helpless in his heart. With this puppet by his side, Xiao Yan's battle strength could be said to have soared once again. It would be incomparably difficult to take him down. If Xiao Yan's strength was due to the degree of condensation of his Do Qi and the high-class Do skills that he possessed, then the Northern King's strength originated from his own body. As a member of the Dragon Clan, the strength of his physical body was naturally blessed by the heavens. Moreover, this physical body had fused with 3 members of the Dragon Clan, and was refined into a puppet by Xiao Yan. With its current strength and the lightning energy that it had obtained through luck, it would not be difficult for it to deal with a middle-stage 7-star half-martial emperor. Most importantly, the puppet itself did not feel pain. When it fought, it was like a desperate man risking his life. Without absolute confidence, who would dare to fight against it? Humph. Yan Xiao, do you think that with so many of us here, we would be afraid of a 6-star half-martial emperor puppet like you? Although his heart was extremely afraid of the Northern King beside Xiao Yan, that 7-star bandit still forcefully revealed a cold smile on his face. Immediately he raised his right arm high, faced the group of bandit experts behind him, and cried out in a loud voice. Everyone! I believe that everyone present wants to obtain the Void Lightning Pool invitation in Yan Zhao's hands. However, Yan Xiao is stubborn and is unwilling to give up even in such a situation. Since this is the case, everyone should attack together. Capture Yan Xiao and take out the Void Lightning Pool invitation. After that, we will make a decision. Unfortunately, after those words left his mouth, the group of half-martial emperors rolled their eyes and revealed expressions of disdain. It was clear that Li Gan wanted to use them again. After the first time, how could they fall for it a second time? Xiao Yan couldn't help but sneer. Ha 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 ha. I say, this is a trick that our predecessors have used before. You actually shamelessly used it a second time. Do you think they are stupid? Only when those words were spoken did that quasi-martial emperor realize that not a single one of the quasi-martial emperors behind him was willing to fight. They all looked at him indifferently. Their gazes seemed to be filled with mockery and ridicule. Damn it! What a bunch of cowards! Heh, since you want to obtain the lightning invitation card in my hands so much, why don't you give it a try yourself? This. Xiao Yan's words caused the gazes of those half-martial emperors to instantly gather onto that 7-star half-martial emperor. As for that 7-star half-martial emperor, he revealed an ashen expression. He never expected that in the end, he would still be the one to be implicated. Humph. Forget it. Since you all are giving up on the Void Lightning Pool invitation, this old man can only accept it on your behalf. After hesitating for a moment, that 7-star half-martial emperor finally stood out. After sneering, he looked at Xiao Yan. The corners of his eyes involuntarily glanced at the Northern King, who was standing by Xiao Yan's side. Only then did he turn to Xiao Yan and speak with a stern expression. Since we are going to fight, let's do it in a fair manner. You and I will fight 300 rounds. If you lose, hand over the Void Lightning Pool invitation card to me. If you lose, this old man will let you leave this place safely. After those words were spoken, Xiao Yan couldn't help but snort coldly. He indifferently glanced at that 7-star half-martial emperor and sneered. This is the so-called fairness you speak of? If you win, you will get the Void Lightning Pool invitation. If I win, I will get nothing. Then what do you want? Letting you leave safely is already the most I can do. Don't push your luck. Fine. Since it's like this, I'll let him fight with you. After all, he is also a part of my strength. If you can defeat both of us, it'll be your win. After those words were spoken, the 7-star half-martial emperor's expression instantly changed. He didn't expect Xiao Yan to be so overbearing. With the help of this puppet, he actually dared to force him to submit. Although he was extremely furious in his heart, he clearly knew how powerful the Northern King was. Thus, he didn't dare to rashly confront him. In addition, there was also Xiao Yan by his side. In his heart, he felt even more helpless. After a long while, he fiercely clenched his teeth and spoke word by word. Fine. At most, I'll do as you say. However, you have to guarantee that when the time comes for us to fight, that puppet of yours. Don't worry. As long as no one disturbs us, it will absolutely not attack. Before the 7-star half-martial emperor finished speaking, Xiao Yan continued. Hearing those words, The 7-star half-martial emperor nodded his head in satisfaction. When he looked at Xiao Yan, his gaze contained a trace of an ice-cold mocking smile. He was confident in his heart. Although Xiao Yan wasn't easy to deal with, he had exhausted quite a bit of his strength in order to kill Li Gan earlier. If he were to fight with Xiao Yan now, he had over 70% certainty that he would be able to defeat Xiao Yan. At that time, the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation would rightfully become his. Humph. Yan Xiao, although you're extremely smart in the end, you've become a victim of your own cleverness. Although you were able to defeat the 6-star half-martial Emperor Li Gan, it is absolutely impossible for you to be a match for a 7-star half-martial Emperor. This can be considered as you digging your own grave. After coldly laughing in his heart again, the 7-star half-martial Emperor raised his head, looked at Xiao Yan and said with a smile, "Fine. All right, since that's the case, then tell me, what do you want as the wager? Don't worry, as long as it's something that this old man has, I will not be stingy." As he spoke, the 7-star half-martial Emperor appeared to be extremely magnanimous as he patted his chest. It was as if he was extremely confident in the things that he possessed. Seeing this, Xiao Yan also smiled. He turned his gaze and said with a smile, "Haha. Since it's like this, I won't say anything more. The things that I need, you might not have them here. Thus, I'll use spirit coins as the wager first." Amen. Once those words were said, the 7-star half-martial Emperor immediately frowned. A displeased expression was present between his brows. "What's this? Are you looking down on this old man? This old man has walked the continent for so many years. While I don't dare to say anything else, the things that I possess are not inferior to those of some small sections. As long as you dare to say it, there is nothing that this old man cannot take out." The old man stared at Xiao Yan with a ferocious expression. The meaning within his words was self-evident. "Oh." Xiao Yan also raised his eyebrows. A playful smile appeared on the corners of his mouth as he said, "In that case, do you have meteorite mysterious iron in your possession?" Once the 4 words meteorite mysterious iron were spoken, the expressions of everyone present were slightly stunned. The 7-star half-martial Emperor's face was also instantly filled with shock. When he thought of the words that he had just said, his old face immediately felt as if it was on fire. After a long while, he coughed dryly twice and said, "Cough cough. Yan Xiao, don't look for trouble. What you're talking about is something that has long been extinct. How could this old man have it?" Xiao Yan smiled and continued, "Then the Emperor Grade Pill Formula. Humph, this old man is not an alchemist. How could I have the Emperor Grade Pill Formula? Yan Xiao, don't look for trouble. Aha, since it's like this, I don't have anything else that I want. Spirit coins it is." The 7-star half-martial Emperor stared angrily at Xiao Yan and said helplessly, "Say it. How much do you want?" Xiao Yan raised his eyebrows. His eyes narrowed as he looked at the 7-star half-martial Emperor. He sneered in his heart. After a long while, under the somewhat impatient gaze of the 7-star half-martial Emperor, he slowly opened his mouth and said one word at a time, 100,000 spirit coins. Whoosh! When the word Xiao Yan came out, it caused everyone present to be shocked. The face of the 7-star half-martial Emperor twitched violently. In his heart, he wished that he could tear Xiao Yan apart. 100,000 spirit coins. In all these years, the total amount of spirit coins that he had obtained was less than 1 million. Xiao Yan actually asked for a tenth of it. How could this not cause him to be furious? "Yan Xiao, you're simply asking for too much. Haha, you must be joking. As a 7-star half-martial Emperor, your wealth is naturally not small. I believe that you can still take out 100,000 spirit coins." And already, in his heart, he repeatedly repeated the 2 words that Xiao Yan had said. The anger in the 7-star half-martial Emperor's heart had almost reached the point where he could not restrain his anger. Under his sleeves, his fists suddenly clenched tightly. The dou qi in his body also involuntarily circulated throughout his entire body. The anger in his eyes rose. After a long while, he forcefully suppressed the anger in his heart. He deeply inhaled a mouthful of ice-cold air and held it in his chest. He fiercely nodded toward Xiao Yan and said with difficulty, "Fine. 100,000 it is. 100,000 spirit coins. If I lose, I'll give it all to you. At this moment, the 7-star half-martial emperor was unable to suppress the anger in his heart. He could only continuously comfort himself in his heart. After he obtained the lightning pool invitation and entered the lightning pool invitation, he would definitely return it to Xiao Yan after he came out. Only then was he able to slightly calm down the anger in his heart. Oh, 100,000 spirit coins? Xiao Yan seemed to be somewhat baffled as he asked. Forcefully suppressing the anger in his chest, he once again nodded. He gnashed his teeth and said word by word, "That's right. If I lose, you can take the 100,000 spirit coins." Heh. Xiao Yan lightly laughed. He raised his gaze and seemingly indifferently stared at the 7-star half-martial emperor's eyes. The 7-star half-martial emperor's eyes were filled with suspicion. He did not know what exactly Xiao Yan meant by this. "What do you mean by this?" That 7-star half-martial emperor's face darkened. His tone was somewhat sinister as he spoke. Xiao Yan once again smiled. His gaze swept past the surrounding half-martial emperors. In the end, his gaze returned to the 7-star half-martial emperor in front of him. He slowly said, "I'm sorry. 100,000 spirit coins was before. Now, I want 200,000 spirit coins." Chapter 255. 200,000. At this moment, many of the half-martial emperors standing around Xiao Yan and Yan Xiao revealed extremely shocked expressions. Their faces were filled with disbelief as they stared at Xiao Yan. None of them would have thought that he would be so overbearing. The 100,000 spirit coins that Xiao Yan said earlier was already enough to cause the fury in that half-martial emperor's heart to rise. But now, Xiao Yan actually changed the wager in an instant right in front of him. He said 200,000 spirit coins right off the bat. Even some of the half-martial emperors present would not be able to take out such a large amount of spirit coins. Moreover, it was a full 1/5 of all the spirit coins that half-martial emperor possessed. Xiao Yan was truly demanding an exorbitant price. This Yan Xiao, does he have the intention to provoke him? If that's really the case, then he's truly too daring. TSK, 200,000 spirit coins. If I had that much spirit coins, I would rather not have that lightning pool invitation. After all, as long as I have enough spirit coins, wouldn't I be able to purchase even more cultivation resources? You're mistaken. Indeed, spirit coins are able to purchase sufficient cultivation resources, and can indeed increase a cultivator's strength. However, there's a difference. The power obtained from relying on those things will not be as pure as the power obtained from the lightning pool invitation. Moreover, due to the difference in cultivation resources, the impurities that remain in a cultivator's body after refining them will also accumulate. In the end, it will still cause harm to the cultivator's body. However, the power within the lightning pool invitation is greatly different. The lightning within the lightning pool invitation is one of the most ferocious and overbearing powers in the world. After devouring it, not only will there not be any impurities left in one's body, one will also be able to condense qi and temper one's body. No matter how one looks at it, the benefits of the lightning pool invitation far surpass ordinary cultivation resources. This is the main reason why so many people fight to enter the lightning pool invitation. At this very moment, that half-martial emperor's eyes were practically spitting fire as he stared at Xiao Yan. Under his sleeves, his fists were clenched so tightly that crackling sounds could be heard. His old face was extremely gloomy and the fury in his heart was self-evident. 200,000. Good. Good. What a good Yan Xiao. The old man cried out angrily. His somewhat hoarse voice revealed the fury in his heart. If the 100,000 spirit coins caused the fury in his heart to explode, then the 200,000 spirit coins that Xiao Yan had spoken of was sufficient to cause him to instantly explode. Yan Xiao, since you don't know what's good for you, then don't even think about getting these 100,000 spirit coins. Today, this old man will make you lose everything. With another angry shout, the old man's eyes turned crimson red. Fierce qi gushed out from his body in an instant. His figure moved, and a punch was thrown toward Xiao Yan. Die for this old man. With a stern cry, the old man's forward-charging speed became even more ferocious. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived within 10 feet of Xiao Yan. Seeing that Xiao Yan remained unmoved, the old man's face appeared even crazier. Boom. However, in the next instant, a light flashed in front of Xiao Yan. Following the flash of a pitch-black light, the North King's sturdy body suddenly appeared in front of Xiao Yan. It was like a small mountain had blocked Xiao Yan behind it. Without any hesitation, the North King had just stabilized his body when he suddenly clenched his fist, which was more than twice the size of an ordinary person's. He raised his head and coldly stared at the half-martial emperor in front of him. A punch that was not inferior to the half-martial emperor's in strength was suddenly thrown out. At the same time, a cold and dry voice was heard from his mouth. "Don't you dare hurt my master." As his voice sounded, the North King's punch, which was filled with power, collided with the old man's punch. With a loud bang, the North King's sturdy body, which was half a body taller than the old man, could not help but tremble. He took half a step back. As for the old man, he was the one who could not help but retreat a few meters under the North King's punch. He suddenly waved his sleeve, and an invisible force vibrated behind him. Only then did he find it difficult to stabilize his body. Damn it. This damn thing is so domineering. Its strength is actually so terrifying. If I were to forcefully attack, I'm afraid that it would be difficult to fight against it. The old man's left hand held his right wrist. His slender fingertips were deeply embedded in his flesh as he forcefully stabilized his violently trembling right arm. The do-chi in his body quickly surged into his right arm, completely eliminating the lightning energy that was wreaking havoc within it. A long while later, the old man finally looked at the North King, who was still maintaining his punching posture. Although his face was forcefully composed, his heart was already filled with shock. Even though the North King had suddenly attacked first, the strength of that punch was extremely powerful. Just from the collision just now, the North King was definitely not an opponent that he could easily defeat. With a thought, the North King in front of Xiao Yan stood to his left. Xiao Yan's gaze stared directly at the old man, whose face was alternating between green and white. The corner of his mouth curled into a cold smile as he tilted his head and said, "Why? Are you planning to use force because you can't take out any spirit coins?" Hearing this, the old man's face immediately became furious. He waved his sleeve and angrily said to Xiao Yan, "Yan Xiao, the fact that the old me can use 100,000 spirit coins as a bet is already the greatest price. However, you do not know what is good for you and have opened your mouth wide. The Void Lightning Pool invitation is not worth this price." Xiao Yan raised his eyebrows slightly and nodded. Two of his fingers randomly beckoned in the empty space in front of him. The black storage ring on his finger flashed, and a palm-sized bright silver invitation appeared in Xiao Yan's hand. Void Lightning Pool invitation. It's the Void Lightning Pool invitation. He has taken it out. Following the appearance of the lightning invitation, the expressions of the surrounding half-emperors changed. They immediately began to whisper to each other. Their gazes were filled with greed and desire as they looked at the lightning invitation. "Ah, I naturally know that the value of this lightning invitation is not even 200,000 spirit coins. Since you are unwilling to take out 200,000 spirit coins as a bet, please leave. I believe that other than you, there should be quite a number of people who can take out 200,000 spirit coins as a bet. You, Yin Xiao, don't you go too far." The old man stared at the lightning invitation in Xiao Yan's hand and reprimanded angrily once again. Xiao Yan lifted his chin slightly. The corners of his mouth lifted into a mocking cold smile. His gaze swept across the surrounding half-emperors. Finally, his gaze returned to the old man in front of him and said with a cold smile, "I am going too far? It is clearly so many of you who have surrounded me, a 3-star half-emperor. Now, you are saying that I am going too far. Don't you think that your words are very laughable?" Yin Xiao. Although the old man was incomparably furious in his heart, he was also speechless. No matter how one put it, the scene before their eyes did indeed appear as Xiao Yan had said. However, Xiao Yan's actual actions caused all of them to be unable to do anything. Restraining each other caused none of them to be willing to take action. After all, the bird that sticks out will be shot. Moreover, there were so many people here. It was equivalent to countless spears pointing at them. As long as someone took action, regardless of whether they succeeded or not, they would become the target of everyone. He forcefully suppressed his impulse to take action again. After all, the Northern King beside Xiaoyan was truly not easy to deal with. If he was not careful, he could be suppressed at any time. That kind of situation was not something he was willing to see. The old man once again took a deep breath. The icy cold air seemed to have calmed the anger in his chest. However, his pair of sinister eyes carried a gaze that seemed to want to devour someone as he firmly stared at Xiaoyan. The wide palms under his sleeves could not help but tremble violently. After a good while, this old man, a 7-star half-emperor expert, finally gave in completely in front of Xiaoyan, a 3-star half-emperor, who seemed to be the weakest present. All right, 200,000 it is. If you continue. Don't worry, I know that this is already your bottom line. I will not increase it any further. A warm smile immediately appeared on Xiaoyan's face. However, in the old man's eyes, it was a cold and mocking smile. Chapter 256. Humph. The old man coldly stared at Xiaoyan as he snorted coldly. He extended his hand and grasped the air. A broadsword immediately appeared in his hand. He held the hilt of the broadsword, and the sharp blade was slanted towards the ground. The cold glint of the blade caused people who saw it to feel a chill in their hearts. This blade was completely ink-black in color. Its size was not inferior to Xiaoyan's heavy Xian ruler. The thick and heavy blade, together with the strange symbols on the blade and the edge of the blade that was overflowing with a cold glow, caused this broadsword to have an additional domineering aura. After the broadsword appeared in his hand, the old man became even more confident. He rotated the palm that was holding the hilt of the broadsword and grabbed the hilt of the broadsword with a flip of his hand. Following the momentum, he fiercely lifted the broadsword. His elbow was pressed against the back of the broadsword, which was 3 fingers wide. He borrowed the strength from his wrist to his elbow and fiercely slashed the broadsword upwards. The blade that was filled with killing intent instantly streaked across the air toward Xiaoyan. At the same time, as the blade vibrated, an invisible blade aura instantly streaked across the air and chopped toward Xiaoyan. Using this move before the battle had even started, it could be considered as this 7-star half-martial emperor testing Xiaoyan's strength. Faced with the incoming invisible blade aura, Xiaoyan couldn't help but feel amazed by this old man's methods. Without using any energy, and relying on the blade aura of the weapon itself, to be able to use the weapon to such an extent, this broadsword had likely been with this 7-star half-martial emperor for many years. Compared to the weapon, Xiaoyan's dark heavy buster sword had also been with him for several tens of years. In front of this blade aura, it was naturally not to be outdone. Ruler, come. After putting away the void lightning pool invitation, Xiaoyan's right arm suddenly crossed in front of his chest. He casually grasped at the space to his left. A ray of light suddenly flashed in the space, and the dark heavy buster sword landed in Xiaoyan's hand. Once the dark heavy buster sword entered his hand, Xiaoyan's arm suddenly exerted strength and swept the huge buster sword across the space before him. Finally, the huge buster sword circled around Xiaoyan's palm once. Then, Xiaoyan held the handle of the buster sword with both hands and firmly stabbed the buster sword into the ground before him. Boom. At the same time, a muffled thump was emitted from the empty space between Xiaoyan and the old man. Xiaoyan and the old man exchanged glances with each other. Both of their hearts were awed. As for the surrounding half-martial emperors, they began to whisper to each other as they watched the situation on the battlefield. The atmosphere of the battlefield had also become oppressive. That alone is not enough to suppress me. Xiaoyan lifted his eyes and stared at the old man opposite him. His tone was calm as he slowly opened his mouth. Humph. You do have some foundation. But this old man doesn't want to rely on this to suppress you. Wouldn't that be too boring? The old man was a little surprised by Xiaoyan's ruler attack, but he did not take it to heart. After all, this was only a one-sided battle. Only by truly fighting could one truly judge the strength of both parties. As soon as his voice fell, the old man suddenly waved his arm. The broadsword left his hand and stabbed into the ground at an angle. His figure moved, and he was about to rush towards Xiaoyan. Wait! Just as the 7-star half-martial emperor was about to attack, and the surrounding half-martial emperors thought that the show was about to begin, Xiaoyan spread his 5 fingers, extended his left arm, and made a stop gesture towards the old man. At the same time he shouted loudly. Everyone looked over in the blink of an eye after this loud cry sounded. That 7-star bandy old man also hurriedly stopped his body. Immediately, his face was furious as he looked at Xiao Yan. The fury in his heart, which had yet to calm down, once again rose. His mouth furiously cried out. He shouted, "Yan Xiao, what is the meaning of this? Could it be that you want to go back on your words again?" At this moment, the anger in the old man's heart could no longer be suppressed. As a 7-star half-martial emperor, the strongest expert in the ancient savage city, apart from a few people, he had suffered a loss before Xiao Yan, a 3-star half-martial emperor. If news of this were to spread, wouldn't he, a 7-star half-martial emperor, become the laughingstock of all half-martial emperors in the future? How could he endure this? "Yan Xiao, you've made fun of me time and time again. Do you really think that I'm made of mud?" As he shouted, the old man's body suddenly moved. In an instant he shot towards Xiao Yan. At this moment, the anger in his chest could no longer be suppressed. Right now he must make Xiao Yan pay a painful price for his actions. No one could stop him. "Ha! Yan Xiao, prepare to die." In the blink of an eye, the old man had already arrived several feet in front of Xiao Yan. With a wave of his hand, the broadsword was pulled out of the ground as if it had received an order. In an instant it flew into the old man's hand. He raised the blade, and was about to ruthlessly chop down on Xiao Yan's head. Xiao Yan's expression changed abruptly at this moment. He did not expect that this fellow would attack as soon as he said so. He was actually unwilling to listen to what Xiao Yan had to say. Helpless, a thought passed through Xiao Yan's mind. The Northern King's strong body suddenly appeared and blocked in front of Xiao Yan. "Ha ha ha ha. Yan Xiao, you always like to disappear. Every time you come out, you must create such a huge commotion. It is really difficult for us old fellows to not know about you." However, just as the old man was about to attack Xiao Yan, and Xiao Yan was about to let the Northern King receive the attack, the space between the two of them distorted. Immediately, an old man in linen clothes slowly appeared in front of everyone. When the old man appeared, the expressions of everyone present immediately changed. When the old man in linen clothes appeared, Xiao Yan's face finally revealed a relaxed smile. His gaze contained some blame as he looked at the old man in linen clothes who had just appeared. The old man in linen clothes smiled embarrassedly but did not say anything. At the same time, the 7-star half-martial emperor's body that was charging forward abruptly stopped. With a twist of his wrist, he fiercely stabbed the broadsword in his hand into the ground in front of him. Only then did he completely stabilize his body. "Guli," he secretly said in his heart. Immediately, the 7-star half-martial emperor's heart became incomparably heavy. Guli's strength was absolutely within the top 5 in the ancient city. He had quite a deep relationship with Xiao Yan. Now that he had appeared at this moment, it was likely that he had already arrived here long ago. However, he had been observing the situation all along. Thus, he had not appeared until now. Turning around, Guli wore a smile as he looked at the 7-star half-martial emperor. His gaze seemed to casually sweep over the broadsword that the 7-star half-martial emperor had already pulled out. With a faint smile he said, "Look at this broadsword. If this old man's guess is correct, you should be that broadsword Lu Do." Hearing those words, the old man smiled in a slightly embarrassed manner. The anger in his heart immediately dispersed. He slightly bowed to Guli, cupped his hands and said with a smile, "Haha, this is my old name. I have already sheathed my broadsword, and am preparing to live in seclusion in the mountains. The name of broadsword is also no longer present." Hearing those words, Xiao Yan slightly raised his brows. Only now did he know the name of this 7-star half-martial emperor. Lu Do. "Oh." Casually responding, Guli did not say anything more. To him, these things were not important. Guli's gaze turned and looked at Xiao Yan. The latter smiled and nodded. He leaped forward and stood beside Guli. He looked at Lu Do and said with a smile, "Haha, fellow Lu was a little anxious just now. Now that I have already made a bet with you, how can I change it? After all, I am not a person who doesn't keep his word." Xiao Yan's words made the surrounding half-martial emperors curl their lips and remain silent. Lu Do's heart was itching to curse Xiao Yan at this moment. Keeping one's word would change the original 100,000 spirit coins to 200,000 spirit coins in an instant? Isn't this a little too boastful? Xiaoyan noticed the gazes of the surrounding people. He touched his nose with his hand somewhat embarrassedly, coughed twice, and continued. The reason why I interrupted you just now was simply to know that I have already taken out the lightning invitation as the bet. Then, I think your 200,000 spirit coins should also. Although he had not finished speaking, everyone present cast a strange look at Xiaoyan. The corner of Lu Dou's mouth twitched violently. There was an unknown anger in his heart. After such a long time, it was actually just for this? At this moment, even Gu Li, who was beside Xiaoyan, could not help but laugh out loud. After seeing the expression on Xiaoyan's face, he withdrew his laughter. His old face regained a solemn expression. He also did not expect that Xiaoyan would doubt the promise made by a half-martial emperor in public. Perhaps this was indeed Xiaoyan's insurance. But what was Lu Dou's position with such an action? After all, he was a 7-star half-martial emperor. He valued his face even more. Xiaoyan's action was indeed somewhat inappropriate. At this moment, although Lu Dou's heart was filled with fury, he was unable to do anything to Xiaoyan because Gu Li was by Xiaoyan's side. Hence, after a bitter sigh in his heart, he could only helplessly extend 2 of his fingers. A glow flashed between his fingers, and a crystal card with 9 different colored lines on it appeared in Lu Dou's hand. This should be enough, right? When everyone saw this crystal card, their faces immediately revealed a rather surprised expression. Even Gu Li, who was beside Xiaoyan, cast an astonished gaze at Lu Dou. 9 lines crystal card. The value of this is indeed 200,000 spirit coins. Hearing this, Xiaoyan could not help but be slightly stunned. He looked at Gu Li and asked, 9 lines crystal card? What is this? Gu Li narrowed his old eyes and stared at Lu Dou. His gaze paused on the 9 lines crystal card in Lu Dou's hand. 9 lines crystal card. This is a gold card that can be used throughout the continent. Compared to ordinary gold coins, this is even more valuable. A 9 lines crystal card costs 200,000 spirit coins. Normally speaking, only some alchemists or dodi would possess such a thing. After all, this thing is too expensive and most people are reluctant to obtain it. Even I only managed to obtain one a couple of years ago for convenience. Oh, it seems that it's not bad. Xiaoyan's finger rubbed his chin. His eyes narrowed as he stared at the 9 lines crystal card in Lu Dou's hand. He secretly sneered in his heart. Then, I won't be polite. Chapter 257. Xiaoyan and Lu Dou stood 100,000 feet above the ancient savage desolate city. They were able to overlook the entire ancient savage desolate city from this spot. Xiaoyan's heart involuntarily trembled when he saw the outline of the ancient savage desolate city. The ancient savage desolate city was much larger than he had imagined. No wonder so many Bandi experts were gathered here. A prosperous place must have treasures. This was a principle that many cultivators understood in their hearts. Half-step martial emperors were no exception. Xiaoyan raised his eyes and exchanged glances with Lu Dou, who was 50 kilometers away. The two of them looked at each other and smiled, appearing as though they were old friends of many years. However, everyone knew just what kind of brutality was hidden under that smile. With Lu Dou's temperament, once he attacked, he would definitely explode with all the anger he had suffered earlier. If Xiaoyan couldn't withstand it, the consequences wouldn't be hard to imagine. Compared to the size of the crowd outside, Xiaoyan had a calm expression. The corners of his mouth had always carried an indifferent smile. He would deal with whatever came his way. Not to mention, the current Xiaoyan was already able to deal with a 7-star half-step martial emperor with ease. Whether he couldn't withstand it or not depended on who it was. At this moment, the atmosphere of the battleground was exceptionally tense and pressuring. The empty space within a 10,000-foot radius of Xiaoyan and Lu Dou had been completely sealed by the combined attacks of Gu Li and a couple of other high-rank half-martial emperors. The seal would not be removed before the battle between Xiaoyan and Lu Dou ended. Moreover, the ripple that was formed due to the battle between the two would not spread outwards. This practice was the rule of the continent. When experts fought, they had to lead the battle circle into the endless void. Only in this way could they ensure that the cities in the outside world would not be destroyed. Just like the previous battles in the void, they were all carried out in the endless void. Gu Li looked at Xiao Yan with a worried expression. However, after seeing the latter's indifferent expression, Gu Li's expression couldn't help but become serious. He naturally knew Xiao Yan's strength. He was a 3-star half-step martial emperor. No one could remain calm when facing a 7-star half-step martial emperor like Lu Dou with such strength. However, Xiao Yan actually had such an indifferent expression on his face. This was truly strange. After taking a deep look at Xiao Yan, Gu Li turned his gaze back to Lu Dou. Previously, Lu Dou's appearance when he was furious was all under Gu Li's observation. Now that he was about to fight with Xiao Yan, Gu Li couldn't help but feel somewhat uneasy. After thinking for a while, Gu Li's muddy old eyes fixed on Lu Dou. His tone seemed indifferent, but it contained a hidden tyrannical intent. Haha, the two of you, please understand that no matter what the outcome of the battle is, you must stop when appropriate. As long as one of you admits defeat, the other party will not continue to attack. If you insist on attacking, don't blame this old man for being ruthless. Hearing Gu Li's words, Lu Dou's expression couldn't help but change slightly. Gu Li's words were clearly directed at him. However, he sneered in his heart. With Gu Li present, he naturally wouldn't dare to seriously injure Xiao Yan. Moreover, his current goal was the Void Lightning Pool invitation. If he attacked too ruthlessly, it would be hard to avoid being ridiculed. With Gu Li's relationship with Xiao Yan, he might interfere. Therefore, for the sake of the Void Lightning Pool invitation, he wouldn't go too far. Xiao Yan also smiled slightly after hearing Gu Li's words. He didn't say anything. Instead, he looked at Lu Dou opposite him, and the corners of his mouth slowly rose into a playful smile. In this way, I won't be able to use my full strength. Very well, let me see how many feet I need to deal with a 7-star half-emperor. After saying those words, Xiao Yan extended his hand and beckoned. The dark heavy buster sword landed in his palm. The body of the buster sword suddenly shook, and Xiao Yan's buster sword slashed towards Lu Dou. Flaming devouring wave. Rainbow light violently shot out, covering more than half of the sky. The surrounding space also exploded at this moment. Facing Xiao Yan's attack, Lu Dou couldn't help but reveal a sneer on his face. His aura wasn't inferior to Xiao Yan's. The ink-black broadsword in his hand danced and revolved. As the broadsword slashed downwards, the blade light slashed out and collided head-on with Xiao Yan's flaming devouring wave. Bang! The broadsword light and the ruler light cancelled each other out. Xiao Yan and Lu Dou simultaneously moved. The broadsword slashed through the air and collided with each other in an instant. Clang! 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 The two people's attacks were extremely grand. Every time the broadsword and the ruler collided, the heaven and earth would tremble unceasingly. Their terrifying auras still wreaked havoc in this space. In merely a short period of time, the two people had already collided several hundred times. As for the intense battle, it had only just begun. When the crowd outside saw this, they would definitely think that this was a battle between two experts of the same cultivation level. At this moment, compared to the astonishment of the crowd outside, Lu Dou was extremely shocked. He originally thought that with his strength as a 7-star half-martial emperor, he would be able to completely suppress Xiao Yan in a battle like this. However, he didn't expect that every time he collided with Xiao Yan, the power transmitted from Xiao Yan's buster sword was actually not the slightest bit inferior to his own. At the same time that he was shocked, he also started to have some doubts about Xiao Yan's true strength. Was Xiao Yan's strength really as it seemed on the surface? Was he only a 3-star half-martial emperor? Or could it be that he had used some sort of secret technique to conceal his strength? However, regardless of what level Xiao Yan's true cultivation level was, at the very least, the Xiao Yan before him was not someone that he could easily deal with. Fighting against Xiao Yan was also not as easy as he had imagined. At this moment, Lu Dou had truly started to become serious about Xiao Yan. If he wanted to defeat Xiao Yan, he would have to reveal his true strength. Otherwise, it would likely be extremely difficult for him to defeat Xiao Yan. Ha! With a stern shout, Lu Dou suddenly waved the broadsword in his hand. The dou qi within his body rapidly gathered. A bit of scarlet dou qi appeared on the pitch-black broadsword. Immediately after, The broadsword trembled and once again charged explosively toward Xiaoyan. Seeing this, Xiaoyan's eyes flickered with radiance. The buster sword in his hand also stopped moving. You're finally going to use your true strength. I can't wait any longer. With a sneer, Xiaoyan's right hand grasped the handle of the buster sword. Suddenly, he pulled with all his strength. His left palm stroked the body of the buster sword. The heavenly flame violently surged in the center of his palm. The pitch-black buster sword was immediately dyed with a gorgeous color. Ha! With a stern shout, the buster sword was placed diagonally behind his back. Slightly nodding his head, Xiaoyan raised his gaze and stared at Lu Dou. His left foot took half a step forward. His body was slightly bent. His palm tightly grasped the handle of the buster sword. The dou qi within his body was crazily poured into the buster sword as if it was free. At this moment, the gorgeous heavenly flame fiercely rose up. It was like a gorgeous flag that was fluttering in the air. For a moment, the void was strangely silent. A strange atmosphere enveloped the world. Everyone was silent. Their eyes were suffused with a dignified radiance. Their gazes were firmly fixed on Xiaoyan's buster sword and the broadsword in Lu Dou's hand, who was standing opposite of Xiaoyan. Silence. Deathly silence. Everyone held their breaths as they waited. Even the slightest sound of breathing was enough to be heard clearly. It was a long while later when this silence was finally broken by a somewhat hoarse, ice-cold voice that did not contain the slightest emotion. This blade of the old me is created by gathering all the comprehension that I have comprehended throughout my life. I call it garrison. Garrison. It was a simple word. However, the instant it was uttered, it caused the entire place to tremble. Once a blade technique was trained to the unity of heaven and man level, it was unable to progress any further. Hence, this blade technique that Lu Dou had trained could be considered a kind of memorial to the broadsword in his hand. One could imagine the strength of this blade technique. Lu Dou was able to reach his current level because of his reputation. Even though Xiaoyan was not weak, he similarly had his own pride. The pride of being a strong person. Yan Xiao, if you are able to receive it, the old me is willing to be defeated. Chapter 258. Lu Dou's hand held the hilt of the broadsword. The broadsword's tip faced upwards as it stood in front of him. His rough palm slowly stroked the body of the blade that was as black as ink. The strange symbols seemed to have come alive as they twisted and emitted a strange glow. Suddenly, Lu Dou's palm suddenly drew across the incomparably sharp blade. Following the twitching of the muscles at the corner of Lu Dou's eyes, the essence blood that had gathered in his palm was completely swallowed by the inhuman broadsword in his hand. Immediately, the light on the broadsword shone brightly. Those strange symbols were filled with a strange scarlet energy at this moment. A bloody aura spread out. Waves of dense blood-colored fog lingered around the broadsword's body unceasingly, concealing the entire blade within the blood fog. Lu Dou, who had lost the essence blood, his originally rosy face had instantly become pale white. He appeared incomparably weak. However, that pair of shady old eyes still sparkled with a bright glow. When Xiaoyan saw this, his eyebrows involuntarily knit together. Clearly, this dou technique of Lu Dou, which was called garrison, had an extremely frightening exhaustion on the user's body. Just from the point of the blood sacrifice, the degree of ruthlessness of this blade technique had already exceeded everything. However, on the other hand, although this technique garrison had an extremely great exhaustion on the user's body, and might even harm the user's essence, the strength obtained from it was also unimaginable. Although the drawbacks of this killing technique were not small, it was still a kind of trump card that could be used to save one's life at a critical moment. Since I created this saber strike garrison, I've executed it a total of 4 times. Moreover, every single time, it was when I was on the verge of death and on the verge of death, turning the situation around and forcefully killing my opponent. When these words of Lu Dou's were spoken, regardless of whether it was Xiaoyan in the arena or the group of half-emperor experts outside the arena, even Gu Li, all involuntarily threw a surprised gaze at Lu Dou. It was unexpected that this garrison was actually even more frightening than they had imagined. How could a person who was able to cause an expert like Lu Dou to fall into a life-and-death situation be a mediocre person? Even if that was a matter of the past, it was still unable to hide the terror of this blade technique. Being able to kill a half-emperor expert with one blade was sufficient to allow Lu Do to do whatever he wanted among the half-emperor class experts. It is really unexpected that he actually has such a skill. Moreover, from the strange aura of his blade, it is likely that his words are not without reason. In this way, if they were to really fight, wouldn't it be extremely likely that even the old me would be seriously injured when faced with this blade technique? That Yin Xiao. The moment he thought of this, Gu Li's expression immediately changed intensely. If that was really the case, then Xiaoyan would really be in danger. Damn it! I really shouldn't have. Why have I become muddle-headed? The gap between a 3-star half-emperor and a 7-star half-emperor is extremely large. With Lu Do's strength, how could Xiaoyan withstand this blade technique? At this moment, Gu Li's heart was filled with anxiety. He regretted actually allowing Xiaoyan to fight against Lu Do. If this were to continue, then Xiaoyan would be in danger at any moment. However, it was definitely too late for him to intervene now. Thus he could only wait. Wait for Xiaoyan to make the first move. Wait for Xiaoyan to be unable to withstand it. Then he would immediately act to save Xiaoyan. After all, Xiaoyan was the chief alchemist of his alchemist guild. He was also the champion of this year's alchemist grand meeting. Moreover, he and Qi Lin had a pretty good impression of Xiaoyan. It was reasonable for him to not allow anything to happen to Xiaoyan before his eyes. With a thought, he secretly raised the dou qi within his body and circulated it to every part of his body. He was prepared to make a move at any moment to ensure that he could respond to any sudden situation in time. Haha, I didn't expect that you would use the ultimate skill of your lifetime when I've only just met you. I don't know whether I should be happy or sad in my heart. Although Xiaoyan was surprised by Lu Do's words, he still smiled faintly. Xiaoyan was confident that even if Lu Do's blade technique, Garrison, wasn't weak, he would still be able to block it by relying on his 7-fold heaven-breaking ruler. After all, when 7 human-rank Do skills were used together and complemented each other, their might wouldn't lose to the full-force attack of an 8-star half-emperor. I just didn't expect that you'd actually concealed your strength so deeply. No wonder Li Gan was defeated by you. His death wasn't due to your luck. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame him for being too stupid. Lu Do opened his mouth once again. His words were filled with admiration for Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan smiled and didn't say anything. However, the hand that held the heavy Xian ruler in his hand tightened again. The dou qi within his body poured into the huge ruler even more wildly. Broadblade Garrison. After a long time, when the sky once again fell into silence, Lu Do suddenly let out a violent shout. He fiercely swung the broad blade in his hand. The broad blade's hilt shot straight up into the sky. Lu Do's body suddenly moved and rushed toward Xiaoyan. Seeing this scene, Xiaoyan couldn't help but frown slightly. Lu Do had already arrived in front of him, but his broad blade had already been swung into the sky. At this moment, Lu Do was rushing toward Xiaoyan. If he didn't respond in time, he was afraid that he would leave a big gap for Lu Do. However, just when everyone outside the arena was feeling anxious for Xiaoyan, Xiaoyan's body didn't move at all. His eyes slowly closed. An enormous spiritual strength quickly spread out and enveloped this space. At this moment, even the slightest change in this space would all fall into Xiaoyan's eyes. As expected, Xiaoyan coldly laughed in his heart. If Lu Do's move was used against an ordinary half-emperor, perhaps it would really be difficult to deal with him even if the opponent's strength was much higher than his. However, facing Xiaoyan, who was an alchemist, this little trick of Lu Do's was somewhat insufficient. The next moment, in front of the stunned gazes of everyone outside of the battleground, Lu Do's body, which was charging explosively toward Xiaoyan, suddenly turned into an illusionary shadow and swiftly disappeared into the empty space the moment they made contact. Instantly, everyone present swiftly understood that Lu Do's figure was only an afterimage. Since that was the case, then his true body should be at / A stern cry sounded. In the sky, the broadsword that contained a frightening dou qi suddenly appeared to be controlled by something. The broadsword that was flying upward suddenly paused in midair. Immediately, the body of the blade turned and the tip of the blade pointed downwards. It faced Xiaoyan and violently chopped down. At the same time, Lu Do's body also appeared. His hand held the hilt of the broadsword as he came in a menacing manner. With the broadsword in front, the strong and overbearing aura caused Lu Do to be unable to find the slightest opening. This also caused the might of the broadsword in his hand to be even more frightening. The 15th fruit was indeed worthy of being created by Lu Do Ning throughout her life's comprehension. This kind of unassailable overbearing might really shook one's soul. However, the more it was so, the more it stirred the overflowing fighting intent in Xiao Yan's heart. They were both self-created Do skills. However, it was unknown whether Xiao Yan's 7-layer sky-breaking ruler, or this blade technique was stronger or weaker. Perhaps, both of them were extremely frightening existences. Seeing that Lu Do was getting closer and closer to him, Xiao Yan could not help but feel a little solemn in his heart. After all, he had only used the 7-layer sky-breaking ruler twice. Moreover, each time it was a long-distance collision. At this moment, at such a close distance, Xiao Yan could not help but feel a little worried in his heart. Without destruction, there can be no construction. This kind of situation was something that Xiao Yan would encounter sooner or later. Since this was the case, why not take this opportunity to give it a try? Outside the arena, Guli's face was solemn as she watched Xiao Yan and Lu Do in the arena. Her brows were filled with worry. On the other side of the crowd, a few human figures wrapped in black robes also revealed a dark gaze as they stared at Xiao Yan in the arena. Chapter 259. As he thought of this, Xiao Yan's face immediately revealed an overflowing fighting spirit. He once again tightened his grip on the heavy Xian ruler as he let out a stern cry. His right arm suddenly waved and the beautiful heavy Xian ruler danced like a long banner. The huge ruler drew across and 100,000 feet long ruler glow shot out. Immediately, the color of the sky and the earth became one. The colors of all living things were completely covered at this moment. The majestic ruler glow tore through the empty space and violently collided with the frightening blade technique, Garrison, that was coming at him head-on at lightning speed. However, in the next moment, regardless of whether it was Xiao Yan in the arena or the group of half-DD experts outside the arena, all of their faces revealed an extremely shocked expression. It was difficult to imagine that this ruler glow of Xiao Yan's that was comparable to a high human class Do technique would actually be so weak in front of the blade technique, Garrison. Under the shocked gazes of everyone, Xiao Yan's ruler that was filled with power was actually forcefully broken by the Garrison, in an unstoppable manner within a couple of breaths' time after it collided with Lu Do's blade technique. Garrison. Lu Do coldly laughed. This Garrison of his had merged with the essence blood in his body. He had exhausted his essence blood as the price in order to form this blade. How could its strength be easily compared to a high human class Do technique? Although the blade technique, Garrison, had not reached the level of a Ling class Do technique, its strength was far from what an ordinary Ling class Do technique could compare with. Even though this ruler glow of Xiao Yan's was a high human class Do technique, it was similarly difficult to suppress it. Xiao Yan was naturally unwilling to be outdone. He also did not place all of his hopes on this ruler. He clearly understood that just this ruler alone was far from enough to defeat Lu Do. Therefore, 7-layered sky-breaking ruler, the second ruler. Xiao Yan cried out sternly in his heart. He once again waved the huge ruler. As the ruler glow shot out, another majestic ruler glow that was not the slightest bit inferior to the first ruler shot out. Lu Do coldly laughed. Xiao Yan actually dared to use this move. Everyone outside the arena also threw regretful gazes toward Xiao Yan. Gu Li's expression carried a little nervousness as he stared at the broadsword in Lu Do's hand. His heart did not dare to relax even a little. What the hell is this kid doing? In the next moment, the magnificent ruler light was already in front of the broadsword. In just a moment, the two would collide. 3 feet. With a stern cry in his heart, Xiao Yan once again waved the giant ruler in his hand. A ruler glow shot out. Just as the broadsword and the ruler glow were about to collide, the ruler glow merged with the magnificent ruler glow at lightning speed. With the addition of the ruler glow, the might emitted by the ruler glow once again soared. 4 feet. However, before everyone's faces could reveal a surprised expression, Xiao Yan once again waved both of his hands. The enormous ruler danced and the heavenly flame soared in the air like a fire banner. The empty space also repeatedly became distorted with it. The giant ruler swung through the void and a terrifying ruler light shot out once again. In an instant, it had merged with the previous two ruler lights. The already terrifying power skyrocketed once again. Seeing this scene, everyone immediately widened their mouths and were speechless. Their faces were filled with shock as they looked at Xiaoyan, who was still waving the huge ruler in his hand. 5 feet. After another stern cry sounded from the bottom of Xiaoyan's heart, the enormous ruler in his hand once again cut through the empty space. The heavenly flame flew and the ruler glow shot out. It followed closely behind and perfectly merged with the 3 ruler glows like a wave. Buzz. With the merging of the ruler glows, the majestic ruler glow that was formed by the merging of the 4 ruler glows became even more imposing. A terrifying heat wave swept through the void. Even with the isolation of the boundary, everyone outside the battlefield still felt an incomparably terrifying heat at this moment. At this moment, everyone outside the battlefield suddenly changed their expressions. They looked at the ruler glow as though they had seen a prehistoric giant beast. 7-layered sky-breaking ruler. 6 feet. However, at this moment, Xiaoyan, whose expression had already become a little pale, once again let out a stern cry in his heart. He suddenly waved the enormous ruler in his hand. The brilliant heavenly flame on it had already become much dimmer. A heavy tiredness gradually surged into Xiaoyan's mind. However, Xiaoyan still did his best to wave the enormous ruler in his hand. A mighty ruler glow once again shot out. He knew that just by relying on this 4 feet, he was unable to defeat Ludo's blade technique. At the very most, it could only cancel out the latter. If Xiaoyan wanted to completely defeat Ludo, he would need to use another foot. Only by going all out would he have the opportunity to completely defeat Ludo. As the 5 feet merged, its power shook the heavens. The terrifying ruler glow split the entire sky. At this moment, the fierce and overbearing aura was even stronger than Ludo's blade technique garrison. Ludo's expression finally changed at this moment. Ludo's grave eyes looked at Xiaoyan. A feeling of helplessness finally rose from the bottom of his heart. He had never expected that his most frightening killing move, which he was most proud of, would actually be thwarted in front of a 3-star bandit like Xiaoyan. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion sounded. Ludo's hand, which was tightly holding the broadsword, could not help but release it with great difficulty. Without Ludo's support, the broadsword could not withstand the storm caused by the explosion for even a moment. It was swept away and ruthlessly stabbed into the ground below. The remaining power of the majestic ruler glow bombarded Ludo's chest in the next moment. Receiving such a terrifying attack head-on, Ludo was seriously injured on the spot. It was hard to imagine how terrifying the power of Xiaoyan's 7th foot would be if he were to use it at the same time. Outside the arena, everyone's eyes revealed shock as they stared at Xiaoyan in the arena. Their eyes were filled with deep disbelief. That blade strike, which was capable of contending against an 8-star half-martial emperor, was actually defeated in an instant by Xiaoyan's 5-foot attack. It was so much so that it was defeated without the slightest leeway. After this battle, Yan Zhao's name would once again resound in the ancient savage city, fighting against a middle-stage 7-star half-martial emperor, and killing a 6-star half-martial emperor before the battle. With such a battle record, Xiaoyan, who possessed the strength of a 3-star half-martial emperor, could absolutely be called a legend in battle. A legend in battle. At this moment, the only words that the people outside of the battlefield could think of to describe Xiaoyan's battle were those 4 words. The dou-qi within Gu Li's body was gradually withdrawn back into the vortex. On the other side, the few Black Cloak people also took a deep look at Xiaoyan before quietly leaving. At this point, the battle could be considered to have come to an end. Needless to say, Xiaoyan was naturally the final victor. Although he had won, Xiaoyan's entire body was exhausted. The dou-qi within his body was completely exhausted. In the previous situation, even if he wanted to use the 7th foot, it was completely impossible. His gaze slowly swept across the half-martial emperors outside of the battlefield, who still had fiery gazes in their eyes. Xiaoyan knew in his heart that although he was not weak, they would not leave the matter at that. From a certain point of view, the temptation of the Void Lightning Pool invitation had even surpassed the importance they placed on their own lives. Of course, this could not be denied that there were no opponents with similar strength among these people. those people would feel a kind of wolf-like greed towards Xiao Yan's strength. Perhaps, under the temptation of the Void Lightning Pool invitation, the unrestrained battle was also the reason why they had come here. Cough cough. Everyone, is there anyone else who wants to snatch the Void Lightning Pool invitation from my hands? Xiao Yan's gaze once again swept across the crowd outside of the battlefield as he spoke in an indifferent tone. At this moment, his body was already unusually empty. The reason why he had forcefully endured and still spoke at this moment was to make these people in front of him feel fear towards him. From there, they would know the difficulty and retreat. Only in this way could Xiao Yan reduce some unnecessary trouble. When everyone heard this, they immediately looked at each other. However, no one was willing to step forward. After witnessing Xiao Yan's strength, there was already hardly anyone present who dared to have any other thoughts about Xiao Yan. After all, they did not have the support of a powerful Douqi like Lu Dou. If that ruler from earlier had landed on any one of them, it was likely that they would have difficulty escaping death. At this moment, it was only natural that they would avoid it if they could. Although there was no change on Xiao Yan's face when he saw this, his heart had finally become much more relaxed. It was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. Moreover, he was currently on the verge of a breakthrough. Excessive fighting would only increase the speed of his breakthrough. This was not good news for Xiao Yan, who was currently doing his best to suppress the Douqi within his body. Brat, the old me wants your Void Lightning Pool invitation. However, just as Xiao Yan was feeling relaxed in his heart, a faint elderly voice was once again transmitted over. This caused Xiao Yan's expression to instantly change. The person who had spoken was actually a 7-star half-martial emperor. Chapter 260. Xiao Yan raised his head and looked over. At this moment, a tall and sturdy old man wearing a cyan gown was slowly walking out from the crowd. Beside him, there was another old man wearing the same clothes as him. That old man was also slowly walking forward. When Xiao Yan saw the faces of these two old men, he was immediately startled in his heart. These two people's appearances were actually exactly the same. It was as if one of them was a copy of the other. This caused one to feel extremely astonished. When the crowd noticed these two old men, they immediately revealed expressions of shock. They had also never expected that these two old men would actually fight for the Void Lightning Pool invitation in Xiao Yan's hand. Lin Feng, Lin Yu. Never would I have imagined that it would actually be them. After the battle ended, the spatial seal was also removed. When the two old men appeared, Gu Li's body flashed and arrived beside Xiao Yan. He was vigilantly watching the two people before him. Hearing Gu Li's words, Xiao Yan involuntarily raised his eyebrows. He cast a puzzled gaze at Gu Li. Although the Douqi in his body was exhausted, he had already taken a medicinal pellet earlier. At this moment, Xiao Yan felt a lot more relaxed. Seeing this, Gu Li involuntarily frowned and sighed softly. After thinking for a moment, he sighed softly and slowly said, "These two people, one is called Lin Feng and the other is called Lin Yu. Their attributes are also the same as their names. One is the wind attribute, and the other is the water attribute." After saying these words, Gu Li turned his gaze around and once again looked at the two old men. His old eyes narrowed. Xiao Yan also stared at the two old men. He nodded slightly. After that, Gu Li continued to speak. These two people, Lin Feng is the older one and Lin Yu is the second. Their strengths are also different. This is something that you have already discovered. Lin Feng's strength is the same as that Lu Dou from earlier. He is a middle stage 7-star half-martial emperor. As for Lin Yu, he is an initial stage 7-star half-martial emperor. Xiao Yan nodded again. With his soul strength, he had already sensed this basic situation when the two had first appeared. If it were only those two individuals, then it would be one thing, as they would not be enough to cause others to pay too much attention to them. However, most importantly, ever since the two of them started cultivating, regardless of what sort of opponent they encountered, they have always fought together. Furthermore, the two of them possess attributes that complement one another. Thus, when they are working together, ordinary mid-stage 8-star half-martial emperors will not be able to do anything to them. It is precisely because of this that their reputation is even greater than Lu Dou's. Hearing this, Xiao Yan nodded again. These twins were indeed strong opponents. When they joined forces, The strength they could unleash was even more terrifying. For example, the gold-silver elders that Xiao Yan had encountered in the Black Corner region were also in this situation. Back then, the gold-silver elders had relied on the tacit understanding between the two of them to fight Su Qian, who was a 3-star Dozong, with their strength at the peak of the Do Huang class. From this, it was not difficult to imagine just how frightening Lin Feng and Lin Yu would be if they were to work together. When Xiao Yan shot his gaze toward Lin Feng and Lin Yu, the two elders also turned their gazes toward Xiao Yan at the same time. Xiao Yan and Lin Feng's eyes met. However, they felt as though they were being pointed at by two invisible sharp swords. Immediately, Xiao Yan's eyes involuntarily hardened. A surprised expression flashed deep within his eyes. The two elders in front of him were even more frightening than he had imagined. This degree of tacit understanding far surpassed that of the gold-silver elders back then. May I know if the two of you are information? Guli beside you should have already told you, right? Xiao Yan's words had just left his mouth when the old man who had spoken earlier interrupted Xiao Yan. He had just spat out half a sentence when the other old man opened his mouth to speak. The order in which the two spoke, the tone in the middle, and even the timbre of their voices were completely the same. It was as though they were the same person. Just by listening to their voices, it was impossible to tell that these words had come from the mouths of the two of them. The perfect cooperation caused Xiao Yan to feel even more solemn toward Lin Feng and Lin Yu in his heart. This was merely a casual conversation. If they were to really be on the battlefield, with the tacit understanding between the two of them, they would be able to easily finish off an 8-star half-D. At this moment, when he thought about it again, the words that had been emitted from the mouth of the old man earlier were likely said by these two at the same time. Let's not talk too much. Our objective. You are already very clear. It was another strange way of speaking. This caused Xiao Yan's heart to feel a chill. Don't tell me that the two of you want to take action now? Xiao Yan's eyes narrowed slightly. The hand that was holding the dark heavy buster sword once again exerted strength. However, his breathing had become somewhat hurried. The current Xiao Yan was indeed a bit too weak. Beside him, Guli took a step forward and half-blocked Xiao Yan behind himself. Compared to Xiao Yan, he was even more clear about the strength of the two people before him. Lin Feng and Lin Yu did not do anything toward Guli. Their blade-like gazes paused slightly on Guli's body. Even when facing an 8-star half-D, they were still confident in being able to defeat them. After that, they looked toward Xiao Yan. Their strange way of speaking caused one's heart to feel a chill. These two people were truly like the same person. That sort of method. We disdain to use it. We will give you 3 days' time. 3 days later, we will wait for you here. That is merely your wishful thinking. What if I refuse to accept your challenge? Xiao Yan frowned. These two people seemed to have absolute confidence in their own strength. However, Xiao Yan did not wish to cause any more trouble. That was not something that he wanted to see. As the champion of the alchemist competition, you are also the strongest member of the younger generation in the ancient city. You do not have the right to refuse. I refuse to accept your challenge. Xiao Yan decisively sneered and interrupted the words that they had yet to finish speaking. These words held no attraction to him. It was merely a false reputation. It did not matter if he had it or not. Sure enough, after Xiao Yan said those words, the two old men were clearly startled. In their hearts, their sister-in-law was astonished. Xiao Yan looked at them. Even the changes in their expressions were exactly the same. As for the surrounding half-D emperors, they also cast astonished gazes toward Xiao Yan. Fame and fortune were things that the majority of experts were unwilling to give up. Sometimes they even cared more about fame and fortune than their lives. However, the Xiao Yan before them was a person who cared more about reality. Qinzhong. He also has the Void Lightning Pool invitation. If you refuse to accept our challenge, then we will go and find him. The result will be the same. You're threatening me. Xiao Yan's expression suddenly turned cold. Guli's expression also turned cold. He knew that Xiao Yan and Qinzhong's relationship was not ordinary. Xiao Yan would definitely not allow such a thing to happen. You can choose to accept our challenge. This time the leading old man spoke alone. As for the other old man, he directly extended his hand toward Xiao Yan. In his hand was a letter of challenge. A fury had already risen in Xiao Yan's heart. His expression had become as dark and solemn as water. The thing that he was least afraid of was threats, because he would not accept any threats. The thing that he hated the most was none other than those who threatened him. Gu Li frowned and looked at Xiao Yan. He was not sure if Xiao Yan would accept the challenge. However, he did not want Xiao Yan to accept the challenge. Now that the void lightning pool was about to open, regardless of whether Xiao Yan was injured or lost the void lightning pool invitation, Xiao Yan would lose the opportunity to enter the void lightning pool. Xiao Yan could not let his emotions affect his decisions at this time. All right. I accept your challenge. 3 days later, I will be here and fight with you. Swoosh! The sound of wind breaking rang out. Xiao Yan stretched out his hand and caught the letter of challenge. The strong wind blew Xiao Yan's hair. This could be considered the first battle between the two of them. Xiao Yan accepted the challenge in front of everyone. Lin Feng and Lin Yu did not want to stay any longer. The two of them turned around and were about to leave. Wait! Xiao Yan coldly shouted. Lin Feng and Lin Yu raised their eyebrows at the same time. Their gazes landed on Xiao Yan at the same time. Their eyes were filled with doubt. Wager. Lin Feng's indifferent voice drifted out. Instantly, everyone's gaze turned to Xiao Yan. This fellow actually dares to think about their wager. Could it be that he still hopes to win against them? Compared to him, Lin Feng and Lin Yu threw a surprised gaze toward Xiao Yan. The two old men exchanged glances with each other before they immediately opened their mouths and spoke at the same time. Void Lightning Pool Invitation. Chapter 261. Void Lightning Pool Invitation. When these words reached the ears of the crowd, they were momentarily stunned. They did not expect that these two fellows would actually be willing to use the Void Lightning Pool Invitation as a wager. However, in the blink of an eye, the crowd swiftly regained their senses. Given Lin Feng and Lin Yu's strength, they naturally did not think much of Xiao Yan. The reason they used the Void Lightning Pool invitation as a wager was so that Xiao Yan would be able to accept the challenge on time. They believed that Lin Feng and Lin Yu also had absolute confidence in defeating Xiao Yan. Otherwise, they would not have purposely used the Void Lightning Pool invitation to attract Xiao Yan. With regards to this point, Xiao Yan was naturally aware. Given his shrewdness, such a low-level method could not be hidden from him. Of course, Lin Feng and Lin Yu did not expect to use such a method to make Xiao Yan lose himself in his greed. Ha! Xiao Yan laughed coldly. There was not the slightest bit of emotion in his tone. He lifted his gaze and looked at Lin Yu opposite him. At this moment, he was holding a bright silver Void Lightning Pool invitation between his two fingers. An extremely obscure glint flashed across the depths of Xiao Yan's eyes. The two people before him had already touched his reverse scale. If possible, he would definitely not show any mercy when they were on the battlefield. On the opposite side, Lin Feng and Lin Yu frowned slightly. They once again looked at each other. A trace of doubt flashed across the depths of their eyes. Their instincts told them that Xiao Yan was not as simple as he seemed. However, when the two of them once again looked at Xiao Yan, the latter revealed a satisfied smile. The strangeness from the previous moment was long gone. From the looks of it, he was rather satisfied with this wager. Haha. The two of you are really generous. However, this is also good. At least this will make things fairer. Lin Feng and Lin Yu remained silent, and did not pay any more attention to this. Two pairs of dark eyes stared deeply at Xiao Yan. Then, under the various gazes of the crowd, they slowly disappeared above the void. Lin Feng and Lin Yu's departure caused the half-step martial emperors to whisper to each other again. They didn't expect Xiao Yan to cause such a huge commotion in the ancient Desolation City after disappearing for half a month. It seemed that the ancient Desolation City was going to be lively again before the opening of the Void Lightning Pool. When Lin Feng and Lin Yu's auras completely disappeared, Xiao Yan's body couldn't help but soften. Seeing this, Gu Li hurriedly supported him, frowning as she looked at Xiao Yan, her heart filled with worry. Yin Xiao, aren't you being a little too impulsive by doing this? Gu Li sighed helplessly. She glanced at the group of half-step martial emperors who were gradually leaving. It wouldn't take long for the news of Xiao Yan's battle with Lin Feng and Lin Yu to spread throughout the wildlands. Xiao Yan forced himself to remain calm, and shook his head gently. After resting for a while, he opened his mouth and said, I also didn't want to cause such a huge commotion before the opening of the void lightning pool. However, they have already come and even used my friends to threaten me. This is something that I can't tolerate. But 3 days later, do you really have the confidence to deal with them? You have already seen their strength. Before he could finish speaking, Xiaoyan shook his head once again. He raised his head with difficulty and looked at Gu Li, saying, They have already come. I think that this will make them even more wary of me. At that time, I might be able to avoid some trouble. Gu Li was shocked. The they that Xiaoyan was referring to was naturally Xiaoyan's group. That's right. Previously, he was focused on the battle in the battlefield and neglected the people outside of the battle circle. In that case, didn't they see the ruler technique that Xiaoyan had used with their own eyes? Sayo, let's hope so. They are already very wary of you. Now that they have seen your extraordinary strength, they will probably restrain themselves. Xiaoyan's face was pale as he nodded slightly. This was the result that he wanted to see the most. After all, if the Union Pavilion wasn't there to restrain them, they would most likely attack. Although Xiaoyan wasn't afraid of them, Yanbing was a huge hidden danger. Therefore, he had no choice but to be extremely cautious. After regaining his senses, Xiaoyan still hadn't forgotten about Lu Dou. He landed on the ground and saw that the severely injured Lu Dou was lying flat in a huge pit. Lu Dou's face was pale, and his body was covered in blood. He didn't expect that Xiaoyan would be so terrifying. The Dou skill that he had created with his lifetime of comprehension was actually defeated by a mere 3-star half-step martial emperor. It wasn't that Xiaoyan was too strong. It was that his ruler technique had already surpassed the ordinary high human rank Dou skill. Otherwise, Xiaoyan wouldn't be able to run amok among the half-step martial emperors. With Xiaoyan's current means, only a genuine 8-star half-step martial emperor expert could defeat him. Moreover, an 8-star half-step martial emperor who could fight with Xiaoyan was definitely an extremely rare existence in the boorish desolate land. The sound of footsteps gradually approached. Lu Dou turned his head with some difficulty and looked in the direction of the footsteps. Gu Li was supporting Xiaoyan, and the two of them were slowly walking toward him. You won. At this moment, Lu Dou no longer had the imposing manner that he had at the beginning. His serious injuries had also awakened him from his greed. The one who had overestimated himself wasn't Xiaoyan, but him. 9-patterned crystal card. Xiaoyan also opened his mouth with some difficulty. Gu Li curled her lips slightly when she saw this. She muttered in her heart. After seriously injuring Xiaoyan, he didn't even say a word of comfort. Instead, he opened his mouth and asked for the 9-patterned crystal card. Who could say that Xiaoyan wasn't greedy? Lu Dou immediately felt helpless when he heard these words. His bloody finger trembled slightly, and the 9-patterned crystal card instantly shot toward Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan didn't stand on ceremony. He placed his hand into his storage ring. Only then did he flick his finger and a ray of light shot into Lu Dou's hand. Lu Dou's heart couldn't help but tremble when he felt the terrifying energy contained within the medicinal pill in his hand. An Emperor tier medicinal pill. Gu Li was also slightly shocked in her heart. There was an additional trace of admiration in her eyes when she looked at Xiaoyan. Lu Dou also cast a grateful gaze toward Xiaoyan at this moment. As a half-step martial emperor expert who traveled the continent, he was naturally extremely clear about the value of an Emperor tier medicinal pill. Xiaoyan was able to give this medicinal pill to him. It was enough to see how steady Xiaoyan's character was. Many thanks. If there is a chance, this old man will definitely repay you. I am the one who injured you. This can be considered as a kind of compensation to you. There is no need to thank me. Xiaoyan shook his head. He softly said a few words to Lu Dou before leaving with Gu Li. Lu Dou looked at Xiaoyan's departing figure. He closed his hand and tightly held the Emperor tier medicinal pill in his hand. It was a long time later before he suddenly swallowed it. The great battle in the sky above the savage ancient city dissipated. In merely a moment, the entire savage ancient city was once again bustling with activity. Many experts who had personally witnessed the scene of the great battle were also bragging about the huge scene they had seen in the taverns on the streets. From time to time, there would be people who would interrupt and correct some of the content of the great battle they had seen. While the people in the city were busy because of Xiaoyan, MOD and the others were sitting in a remote courtyard in the city. I didn't expect Yin Xiao to be so monstrous. He forcefully crossed the gap of 4 stars and defeated that fellow Lu Dou. If this person is not eliminated, he will definitely become a great threat in the future. Old Freak, whose gaze swept across the 3 people in front of him as he spoke in a deep voice. Hearing this, the 3 people lightly nodded their heads. Xiaoyan had truly given them too many surprises. If they couldn't eliminate Xiaoyan, he would definitely become a great enemy in the future. The 7-star half-martial emperor called Zhang Hao's gaze slightly narrowed. From the strength that Xiaoyan had displayed today, he was already able to face a mid-8-star half-martial emperor without fear. Against him, there was no need to say anything more. Humph! Judging from that brat's aura, he has clearly reached the peak of the late 3-star half-martial emperor realm. This time, he entered the lightning pool with the intention of breaking through to the 4-star half-martial emperor realm. Yan Bing's tone was indifferent. Her gaze was fixed on Old Freak, who as she continued to speak. What do you think we should do to kill him? Old Freak, who was immediately at a loss for words. He was also aware of this point. This way, even if Yan Bing and Zhang Hao both broke through, the 4 of them wouldn't be able to do anything to Xiaoyan. Haha. Seeing the gloomy expressions of the 3 people in front of him, MOD, who was sitting on the right side of Yan Bing, suddenly let out an indifferent laugh. He successfully attracted the gazes of the 3 people to himself. Yan Bing's old eyes narrowed as she stared at MOD. Old Freak, who also had an expression of suspicion as he looked at MOD. Even at this time, MOD was still able to laugh. If you have something to say it quickly, Yan Bing said indifferently. Her ice-cold words revealed the impatience in her heart. MOD smiled. His figure slowly stood up from the table. He pretended to be mysterious as he walked around the 3 people. With his back facing Yan Bing, his pair of sinister old eyes slowly narrowed into a thin line. After a while, he slowly opened his mouth. Everyone, have you heard of the Desolate Duo? Chapter 262. When these words were spoken, the expressions of the 3 people present immediately hardened. Their mouths opened slightly and a surprised expression swiftly surged into their eyes. MOD slowly turned around and looked at the expressions on the faces of the 3 people in front of him. He smiled with satisfaction in his heart. His gaze shifted to Yan Bing and said with a smile, Elder Yan Bing, given your experience, you should know more about these 2 tyrants than the old me. Yan Bing's expression once again hardened. A deep solemnness involuntarily surged into her heart when she thought of those 2 people. Beside her, Old Demon Hu and Zhang Hao also looked at Yan Bing, appearing to be waiting for her to speak. A moment later, Yan Bing finally raised her gaze and looked at MOD. She hesitated for a moment before speaking in an indifferent tone. The 2 tyrants of the wasteland are also known as the Northern and Southern Zone of the wasteland. Old Demon Hu and Zhang Hao nodded slightly when they heard this. They knew a little about this. After all, the reputation of those 2 people in the wasteland was too great. Anyone who saw them would definitely recognize them. The reason why they are called the Northern and Southern Zone is because one of them lives in seclusion in the southern part of the wasteland city, while the other lives in the northern part of the city. Yan Bing involuntarily swallowed a mouthful of saliva when she mentioned the southern part of the city. The face of the one in the northern part of the city revealed a deep fear. There is no need to say more about the one in the southern part of the city. All of you should know that he is Old Luo. Although they already knew in their hearts, the bodies of Old Demon Hu and the other 2 involuntarily trembled when Old Luo was mentioned. The deterrence of Old Luo had caused them, who were usually high-class bandits, to lose the glory of being bandit in front of everyone. The one in the northern part of the city. Yan Bing paused before she finished speaking. Her eyes narrowed as she stared intently at the empty space in front of her. An invisible pressure caused the empty space to become distorted. After which, it suddenly exploded with a deep bang. Muhan, people call him Mu Shi. He is a rank 3 formation master, whose spiritual strength has stepped into the unity stage. His strength has also stepped into the advanced 9-star bandit class. He is only 1 step away from breaking through to the Do D class. I think that all of you should be extremely clear about this. After a long while, Yan Bing finally spoke in a deep and cold voice. However, it was not difficult to tell that Yan Bing was deeply afraid of Mu Han from her words. Haha, that's right. The person I want to talk about is the rank 3 array master, who lives in the northern part of the ancient city, Mu Han. As soon as Yan Bing finished speaking, MOD immediately took over and went straight to the point. Yan Bing and the other two's expressions changed again when they heard this. They did not expect MOD to be so bold as to set his sights on this person. Did he really think that this person would think highly of his status as a rank 2 alchemist? MOD seemed to be aware of this. His gaze swept past Old Monster Hu and Zhang Hao, who were similarly in disbelief. Finally, his gaze landed on Yan Bing. The hand under his sleeve trembled slightly, and a palm-sized jade bottle appeared in MOD's hand. After showing the jade bottle to Yan Bing, MOD opened his mouth and said with an evil smile, "Elder Yan Bing, do you still remember Fang Sun and Wang Qi?" Yan Bing was startled. Immediately after, she nodded with a gloomy face. The reason why she helped MOD attack Xiaoyan was because Fang Sun and Wang Qi were members of their Sea Cloud Palace, and also her subordinates. Since the two of them had died at the hands of Xiaoyan, she naturally had to find him to settle the debt. However, immediately after, the expression on Yan Bing's face changed abruptly. According to MOD's words, could it be that? Haha, I believe that Elder Yan Bing has already thought of it. Mu Han had a disciple who was extremely doted on by him. His name was Wu Mahui. As for him, he also died at the hands of that Yin Xiao. Hiss. Without needing to think too much, Yan Bing and the other two immediately knew that Wu Mahui's death was most definitely related to MOD. It was extremely possible that Wu Mahui had been bewitched by MOD, and thus ended up encountering Yin Xiao. At this moment, even Yan Bing, who was a peak late-stage half-martial emperor, could not help but feel fearful of the 3-star half-martial emperor, MOD. Truly, a great man must be ruthless. This guy actually dared to scheme against anyone. Did he really think that Mu Han was so easy to exploit? Yan Bing narrowed her old eyes. Her gaze landed on the jade bottle in MOD's hand. What is this? Could it be that you want to use this to make Mu Han attack Yin Xiao? MOD lightly smiled, lightly nodded and said, "Ha, that's enough. Contained within this bottle is a strand of Wu Mahui's aura. As long as Mu Han sees this, he will naturally believe it." Hearing this, Yan Bing and the other two felt a chill in their hearts once again. In order to deal with Xiaoyan, MOD had thought of all aspects. In this way, as long as Mu Han attacked, no matter how many tricks Yin Xiao had, they would still be useless before the powerful strength of a 9-star half-martial emperor. Are you not afraid that once you tell Mu Han about Wu Mahui's death, he will kill you first? You should know that he dotes on this disciple very much. However, he died in Yin Zhao's hands because of you. How can he let you off so easily? At this time, even old Demon who had been sitting silently by the side, could not help but speak coldly to MOD. He could not let MOD die just like that. After all, old Demon who was different from Yan Bing. The latter was mainly helping MOD because of Fang Sun and Wang Qi. However, he was purely doing it for the medicinal pills in MOD's hands. If he was killed by Mu Han at this time, who would he ask for his reward? MOD once again smiled when he heard this. He had already expected this. With his scheming, he would definitely not throw away his life for Yin Xiao. Haha, old brother who really cares about me. Relax, as long as Xiaoyan does not die, Teacher Mu will not attack me. The three of them involuntarily raised their eyebrows when they heard this. They exchanged glances with each other. However, they did not understand why MOD was keeping them in suspense. Ha ha ha. Next, I hope that the three of you can follow me to the north of the city. At that time, Yin Zhao's death will be a matter of certainty. Ha ha ha. Time flew by. When Xiaoyan had fully recovered on the 3rd day of the 3-day deadline, a black mass of people had already gathered in the sky above the ancient savage city. Needless to say, these people were all here to watch the big battle between Xiaoyan, Lin Feng and Lin Yu. As the most dazzling new star in the ancient savage city for the past 100 years, Xiaoyan's attention had already surpassed the entire wasteland. Now that he was going to fight with Lin Feng and Lin Yu, these two veteran experts who had been famous for a long time, it naturally caused a sensation in the entire wasteland. At this moment, Not only were there the half-emperors who had come to watch 3 days ago, but there were also various local factions in the ancient savage city. Among them, the Alchemist Association and the Union Pavilion were, as expected, among them. Unknowingly, it was already noon. Lin Feng and Lin Yu, who were surrounded by countless people in the sky, were already impatient from waiting. They were wondering if Xiaoyan would be timid and not come to accept the challenge at the crucial moment. The two of them swept their gazes around. Their sinister old eyes immediately stared at Gu Li Qilin, an elder Xian from the Union Pavilion. Seeing these three people, Lin Feng and Lin Yu once again frowned. Since these two factions had already appeared, how could Xiaoyan not come? Brat, you actually dare to be arrogant in front of the two of us. In the big battle later, I will definitely make you lose all your face. Lin Feng and Lin Yu laughed coldly in their hearts at the same time. Haha, I'm sorry to have made everyone wait for so long. After the big battle 3 days ago, some of the injuries in my body have yet to fully recover. That's why I'm a little late. Please forgive me. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, Xiaoyan's clear and heroic laughter suddenly resounded in this world. From his tone, it was as if he didn't care about this big battle at all. Chapter 263. While Xiaoyan was preparing to fight with Lin Feng and Lin Yu, on the other side, a plan targeting Xiaoyan was also secretly carried out. In the north of the ancient wilderness city, outside a magnificent manor, several figures were slowly approaching from afar. These people were Mod and his companions. Looking at the huge manor that was getting closer and closer, Mod and his companions could not help but feel a sense of shock in their hearts. The size of this manor probably took up a third of the entire northern part of the city. When Mod and his companions came within 1,000 feet of the manor, they could clearly see that there was a huge square in front of the manor. At this moment, many people had gathered in the square. In the center of the square, there was an extremely mysterious formation. Every time someone in the crowd paid enough spirit coins to a haughty man, they would step into the formation. After a while, the formation would flash with a golden light, and the person who had entered the formation would disappear. On the other hand, Mod and the other three did not find it strange at all. Although this kind of teleportation formation was rare, with their knowledge, they were not curious about it at all. In a short while, the group had arrived at the entrance of the manor. When they looked up, they saw the two big golden words Mu Zhuang engraved on the plaque above the door. Stop. Who are you? What business do you have in my Mu Zhuang? Just as they arrived at the entrance, 2 armed guards coldly shouted at the 4 of them with a domineering expression. Even though Mod and the others were quite famous in this ancient wilderness city, and many people had seen them before, the 2 guards in front of them had never met them before. They had only heard of their names. Therefore, when 4 strangers appeared in front of the Mu Zhuang, as the guards, they naturally had to stick to their duties. Furthermore, usually, all those who came to pay a visit to Master Mu would have a modest expression. Yet these people had calm expressions. This made them even more certain that these people were definitely not here to pay a visit to Master Mu. Haha. Mod, who usually could not tolerate the scolding of the 2 guards, showed a faint smile in an unusual manner this time. He raised his head to look at the plaque on the door and said with a smile, Master Mu, Mod has brought a few friends to visit you. These subordinates of yours are a little overbearing. Mod's words had yet to fade when the expressions of the 2 guards at the door changed drastically as they looked at Mod's group. No matter what, they did not expect that the 4 people in front of them, who looked ordinary, were actually Mod's group, who had recently fought with Yan Xiao in the ancient savage city. It's not up to you to decide how my people are like. Come in. Someone will bring you to see me. Just as the 2 guards were secretly shocked, a somewhat hoarse voice suddenly resounded throughout the area, causing quite a number of people on the square not far away to turn their gazes over. When the crowd saw that the people who were about to enter the Mu Manor were actually Mod's group, a strange look flashed across their eyes. Some of the people who were about to use the teleportation array to leave also stopped in their tracks. In the end, they did not step into the array. After a short while, Mod's group of 4 stood at the center of an extremely luxurious and imposing hall. In front of them was an old man in robes, whose back was facing the 4 of them. The old man was standing indifferently. It was not difficult to guess that this was Master Mu. Why have you come looking for me? The hoarse voice was once again emitted. MOD's group of 4 felt the entire hall tremble slightly. Yan Bing's face was grave as she stared at the human figure in front of her. Her heart did not dare to relax even a little. Ugh. Master Mu's words were exchanged with a regretful sigh from MOD. A bitter expression was also revealed on his face. This expression caused one's heart to ache. Even Yan Bing and the rest beside him could not help but be secretly surprised in their hearts. The speed at which he got into character was a little too fast. Master Mu, who had his back facing them, could not help but frown at this moment. He was not related to MOD. Why did they come here to cry? If you have something to say, say it. If not, please leave. Don't disturb me. Master Mu. Men, send the guests out. Before MOD could finish speaking, Master Mu was already impatient. He waved his sleeve and coldly shouted. At the same time, a few guards who were waiting outside the hall hurriedly jogged into the hall. They stood on both sides of MOD's group of 4 and extended their hands to gesture for them to leave, indicating for them to leave. MOD also did not expect that Musher's temper would be so fiery, to the point that he would drive someone away without even saying a single word. The 3 people beside him also saw that the situation was bad. No matter what, Yan Bing was an 8-star half-martial emperor, the strongest among the 4 of them. At a time like this, she would naturally be the first to stand out. However, just as Yan Bing could not help but speak, MOD's eyes rolled. He extended his hand to stop Yan Bing. Without batting an eyelid, he gave the latter a look. Then he raised his hand and gently waved it behind him. His tone became heavy once again. Ugh. All right. Since Master Mu is unwilling to listen to me, then let's leave as well. There's no need to disturb his cultivation. After MOD finished speaking, the few of them did not say anything else and walked out of the hall. When Yan Bing looked at MOD, she could not help but reveal a smile of understanding. When the few of them reached the entrance of the hall, MOD once again sighed and said, unfortunately, Wumahos, boom. Before MOD could finish speaking, Master Mu, who was in the hall, suddenly exploded. A frightening pressure instantly swept out. Under this frightening pressure, the few guards were only able to endure for a few seconds before they exploded into a mist of blood. As for MOD's group of 4, other than Yan Bing and Old Monster Who, Zhang Hao and MOD were directly pressed to the ground by this pressure. This was especially so for MOD. His entire old face instantly turned red, and 2 lines of blood flowed out from his ears. What did you say? What happened to Mo Hui? Uncontrollable rage filled the hall, and hoarse roars reverberated like thunder. MOD's flushed face did not reveal any fear because of the pressure on his body. Instead, he revealed an extremely satisfied and sinister smile, like a demon. Boom. In the sky, Xiao Yan's expression was grave as he received a palm strike from Lin Yu. Before he could stop his body, a sharp sound of breaking wind suddenly rang out from behind him. In an instant, Lin Yu had already arrived behind Xiao Yan. He suddenly waved his right palm and ruthlessly attacked Xiao Yan's back. Feeling the frightening aura rapidly approaching behind him, Xiao Yan did not dare to be careless. At this time, it was already too late to turn around and counterattack. Without any hesitation, Xiao Yan's feet moved and instantly executed the sky extinction step. In the next moment, Xiao Yan's figure appeared 100 feet away. Bastard! Are you a loach? What kind of expert are you to be hiding? With a stern shout, Lin Feng and Lin Yu angrily roared at Xiao Yan with gloomy expressions. Since the start of the battle, Xiao Yan had only clashed with Lin Feng a few times. Every time Xiao Yan was repelled and Lin Yu was about to attack, Xiao Yan would use the sky extinction step to dodge. Therefore, although it seemed like 3 people were fighting at this moment, in reality, only Xiao Yan and Lin Feng had truly attacked. Heh! When Xiao Yan heard the 2 of them speaking in unison, the corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. What? It's fine for you 2 7-star half-emperors to bully me, a 3-star half-emperor, but you actually don't allow me to dodge? Could it be that I have to stand there and let you hit me? Chapter 264. Once Xiao Yan's words left his mouth, the crowd of experts outside immediately turned their gazes towards Lin Feng and Lin Yu. Everyone whispered to each other. The words that were emitted were filled with ridicule and sneers towards Lin Feng and Lin Yu. Ehe. As 7-star half-emperors and brothers, they actually said such laughable words to a 3-star half-emperor. Are they sure that they are not here to play around? Haha. They can't even touch Yin Zhao's body, and they still want to snatch his void lightning pool invitation. Aren't they daydreaming? Hearing the waves of ridicule and sneers from the surrounding crowd, Lin Feng and Lin Yu's faces alternated between green and white. They had never imagined that Xiao Yan's speed would actually be so frightening. Their original plan of suppressing him with strength was completely useless today. They had always thought that the reason why Xiao Yan was so powerful was merely because of his frightening ruler Do skill. As long as he did not have the time to use it, regardless of how powerful his Do skill was, it would ultimately be useless. One of the important reasons why they knew so little about Xiao Yan's strength was because they had only arrived at the ancient city of Wildlands 3 days ago. Emph. What a good Yin Xiao. His mouth is really sharp. Since that is the case, the two of us want to see exactly how fast your speed is. Lin Feng and Lin Yu cried out sternly at the same time. Following which, the two of them looked at each other, and their bodies suddenly shook. Waves that filled the sky and a piercingly cold wind immediately swept across the area. Xiao Yan's gaze hardened slightly when he saw this. He frowned slightly and muttered in his heart. Domain huh? However, at this moment, Lin Feng and Lin Yu once again cried out. Fierce cold wind. Extreme water chill. Following the two cries, the piercingly cold wind actually became even more violent at this moment. It was so cold that it pierced one's bones. The waves that had already swept across the entire empty space merged with the cold wind and complemented each other. In a short moment, the entire empty space had already been covered by ice. Xiao Yan frowned slightly when he sensed the powerful pressure that had suddenly surged around him. The extremely cold domain caused the empty space to become extremely viscous. Within this domain, Xiao Yan's overall strength would definitely be suppressed. Merge domain huh? Seems pretty good. Since that is the case, I can only attack quickly and finish you off first. Xiao Yan's gaze stared at Lin Feng opposite him. An ice-cold murderous intent flashed deep within his eyes. At this moment, Gu Li and the others outside the domain saw that Lin Feng and Lin Yu had actually unleashed the domain. In their hearts, they knew how powerful that domain was. Gu Li's face involuntarily revealed a worried expression. Once Xiao speed, Xiao would be subjected to a storm like a storm. Swoosh! With the support of the domain, Lin Feng and Lin Yu were even more confident that they would be able to finish off Xiao Yan within 100 moves. Following the sound of rushing wind, Lin Feng's figure suddenly flashed. In the blink of an eye, he had already appeared beside Xiao Yan. His right palm suddenly smashed violently toward Xiao Yan's head. Humph! Let's see how you're going to escape this time. Xiao Yan sneered. Escape? I have never thought of escaping. Lin Feng's expression changed slightly. Before he could understand what Xiao Yan had said, the latter's tiger body suddenly shook. The dragon phoenix bloodline in his body was instantly activated. He used the Vajra glass body as he wished. He did not dodge or evade. Instead, he turned his hand and punched out. Octane Blast. The might of this punch was incomparably overbearing. A terrifying force crazily poured out at this moment. The might of this punch had actually forcefully overshadowed the Tian class Do skill, and was approaching the human class Do skill. Bang! The fist and palm collided. The golden giant body that Xiao Yan had transformed into suddenly shook. A terrifying huge force was emitted. Lin Feng's body shook slightly, but he did not fall into a disadvantageous position. Doqi swiftly gathered in his palm. His right arm shook and Doqi gushed out. Both of them retreated 100 steps. Seeing this familiar scene once again, Xiao Yan sneered. He moved his feet, and was about to use the sky extinction step. Unfortunately, the same result as before did not happen to Xiao Yan. He had just used the sky extinction step when the space behind Xiao Yan became distorted. Following which, a shriveled palm firmly imprinted itself on Xiao Yan's back. Bang! Following a muffled sound, the King Kong glass body disappeared. Xiao Yan's body was forcefully sent flying 1,000 miles away. A large mouthful of blood was spat out from his mouth with a poochie sound. Even though he had suffered a heavy blow, Xiaoyan still swiftly stabilized his mind. Although the attack just now was filled with power, it was fortunate that Xiaoyan had the King Kong glass body and the Dragon Phoenix bloodline to protect him. Therefore, it did not cause him to be seriously injured. However, Xiaoyan's body had just stabilized when Lin Feng's body came toward him. Lin Feng's face carried a cold smile. His palm once again smashed toward Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan's expression changed. He did not dare to hesitate any longer. A thought passed through his mind and the heavenly flame in his body instantly swept out. Flame domain activate. As the heavenly flame swept out, the expression of Lin Feng, who was charging toward Xiaoyan, instantly changed. His body, which was charging forward, forcefully paused in midair. Following which, his right foot suddenly stomped on the air. His body did not move forward but instead moved back rapidly by 1,000 miles. Bastard! No wonder I felt that this brat's aura was not right that day. It turns out that he has the heavenly flame protecting him. However, from the looks of it, it should only be a seed flame. Lin Feng and Lin Yu stared at the heavenly flame that swept out with a solemn expression. Even though it was only a seed flame, it was still an extremely terrifying existence to them. The two brothers looked at each other and nodded gently. Their gazes once again turned toward Xiaoyan. Suddenly, a ruthless look surged in their eyes. Ice wind. Wanli. As the violent roar sounded, Lin Feng and Lin Yu raised their palms in front of their chests at the same time. Their fingertips touched each other lightly and numerous complicated seals were rapidly formed. At the same time, the fusion domain, which was formed by the fusion of their domains, suddenly moved at this moment. Above the ice, a chilly wind swept out and formed a huge invisible tornado. It forcefully blocked the continuously spreading heavenly flame. However, looking at the slightly strained expression on Lin Feng's face, it seemed that he had spent a lot of effort in order to block Xiaoyan's flame domain. Ah! Just as Xiaoyan sneered, Lin Yu, who was on the other side, suddenly let out a stern cry. With a wave of his large sleeve, the ice immediately melted and once again turned into turbulent waves. Together with the biting cold chilly wind, it completely suppressed Xiaoyan's heavenly flame in a short period of time. After doing all this, Lin Feng and Lin Yu did not stop at all. Their hands moved simultaneously, and the wind domain swiftly attacked Xiaoyan. The water domain followed closely behind. Xiaoyan's expression was solemn. The two domains had already completely surrounded him. It was already impossible for him to dodge. At this moment, even the sky extinction step would not be of any use. Damn it, these two fellows are really freaks. It's fine if they look exactly the same, but why are their domains so terrifying? They can even merge. My flame domain is not a match for them. This is really... Just as Xiaoyan was furiously cursing Lin Feng and Lin Yu in his heart, the two domains had already arrived in front of Xiaoyan. The wind domain completely surrounded Xiaoyan. Although he wanted to, wind was originally an invisible object. How could it be so easy to break through it? It was simply impossible to break through it with ordinary brute force. Moreover, this was a 7-star half-martial emperor's domain. As the two domains grew closer and closer, Xiaoyan's face involuntarily revealed an astonished expression. The water beneath his feet had already turned into ice once again. They were clearly preparing to freeze Xiaoyan. Chapter 265. In the sky, the instant Lin Feng and Lin Yu's hands stopped moving, Xiaoyan's body was also completely sealed in ice. In this world, Xiaoyan's aura also disappeared. Within this pagoda-like ice pillar, the frozen Xiaoyan did not make the slightest movement. He was like a dead person who had been frozen to death. Seeing this, a trace of pity for Xiaoyan involuntarily rose in everyone's hearts. At other times, Xiaoyan had relied on the might of his heavenly flame to suppress his opponents. It could be said that he had always been successful. Unexpectedly, today, he had suffered in the hands of Lin Feng and Lin Yu. With their strength of 7-star half-martial emperors, in addition to this strange fusion domain, it was enough to forcibly suppress Xiaoyan's heavenly flame. At this moment, Xiaoyan was also sealed in ice by them. No matter how one looked at it, he was a fish on the chopping board. He could only be slaughtered by them. Outside of the arena, Gu Li and Qi Lin saw Xiao Yan's current state and were incomparably worried in their hearts. Once Xiao Yan was defeated, the opportunity to enter the lightning pool in the void would also disappear. Compared to the Gu Li duo, old Qian by the side had even more confidence in Xiao Yan. After returning from their trip to the spirit world, Luo Jin had discussed some matters regarding Xiao Yan with him. Moreover, Luo Jin's mouth was filled with praise for Xiao Yan. He believed that the words that came from his young master's mouth would not be wrong. As for Xiao Yan, who was the source of everyone's worry, he felt extremely helpless against this ice. After Xiao Yan was wrapped in this ice, the Do Qi and heavenly flame in his body were unable to be released from his body. This ice had actually completely sealed every single pore on Xiao Yan's body. Not even the slightest crack was left behind. Damn it! I am unable to release my heavenly flame from my body. I am unable to even use my Do Qi. In this way, it is impossible to use brute force to break this layer of ice. Within the ice domain, Lin Feng and Lin Yu detected Xiao Yan, who was still trying to resist, through the layer of ice. The two of them laughed coldly at the same time. This cold ice domain was formed from the merger of the two brothers' domains. It was much stronger than an ordinary domain. Moreover, the water was carried by the wind. It rose and naturally froze Xiao Yan's body until not even the slightest crack remained. This move was something that the two brothers had only mastered after countless actual battles. Now that they were using it again, they were naturally extremely confident in their hearts. Even though this was the case, Lin Feng and Lin Yu did not dare to be careless in their hearts. They exchanged glances and nodded slightly. Immediately, their bodies flashed and appeared outside the ice pillar where Xiao Yan was sealed in ice in an instant. Void Sorrow Slash. Congealing Arrow. Lin Feng and Lin Yu abruptly shouted as the seals in their hands changed. Lin Feng waved his sleeve and an invisible stream of Do Qi violently blasted towards Xiao Yan. At the same time, countless arrows condensed from water floated in the air. The number of arrows even blocked the view of many onlookers outside the field of vision. At this moment, Xiao Yan was still trapped in the ice, unable to move. Do you really think that this ice of yours can trap me for life after trapping me for a while? Just as Lin Feng and Lin Yu were about to give Xiao Yan the final blow, Xiao Yan coldly laughed at the two of them in his heart. Since I can't break it from the outside, then I'll melt it from the inside. Burn. Burn. Heavenly flame. How can it be defeated by such a lowly thing? A stern cry was suddenly emitted from Xiao Yan's heart. The heavenly flame within Xiao Yan's body immediately began to wildly burn all over his body. However, the temperature of Xiao Yan's body swiftly soared to an extremely frightening degree. Even though this was the case, Xiao Yan, as the owner of the heavenly flame, did not suffer any harm. Instead, the cold ice that covered the surface of Xiao Yan's body swiftly melted after the temperature of the heavenly flame erupted. Bang! With his body liberated, Xiao Yan's aura that was forcefully retracted back into his body was suddenly released. The majestic power completely shattered the ice that had not melted yet. Ruler come. With a loud shout, the heavy Xian ruler landed in his palm. Facing the invisible stream of Do Qi, Xiao Yan did not dodge. Instead, he ruthlessly met it with his ruler. Boom! As the explosion resounded in the sky, Xiao Yan once again spat out blood and retreated. At this moment, Lin Feng and Lin Yu finally reacted. Xiao Yan had actually broken their ice seal. So what? You still can't escape the fate of losing. Lin Feng let out a stern cry. The countless number of arrows immediately shot toward Xiao Yan with a lightning-like speed. If those arrows hit, Xiao Yan would probably turn into a porcupine in an instant. Flaming Wave. Facing the endless rain of arrows, Xiao Yan used offense as defense. As he continuously waved his huge ruler, he actually blocked the rain of arrows that were constantly shooting towards him in the void 1,000 feet away. Let's see how you block this arrow. Lin Yu's heart involuntarily became furious when she saw Xiao Yan act in such an overbearing manner, and directly block the rain of arrows. Her left hand clenched in the empty air, and a longbow that was also agglomerated from water appeared in her hand. Her eyes stared fixedly at Xiao Yan, as if she was locking onto a target. Her right hand slowly placed her fingers on the bowstring, and pulled the string behind her ear. Then, with a sharp sound of wind breaking, Another arrow shot out. When the arrow streaked across the sky, it merged with the dense rain of arrows. In an instant, it had turned into a huge arrow that was close to 100 feet long. The terrifying might contained within it was enough to cause one's expression to change upon hearing it. Seeing that all the arrows around him had merged with this terrifying thing that could not even be called an arrow, Xiao Yan's face became serious. If he used the Buddha's fiery lotus, he would naturally dare to fight against this thing before him. However, time was of the essence, and he simply did not have the time to do anything. A 7-star half-martial emperor was, after all, a 7-star half-martial emperor. If Xiao Yan did not use any of his methods, it would be too difficult for him to take them down. Even if he had the last laugh, he would still inevitably be exhausted. However, just as Xiao Yan was about to attack and use all his strength to block this attack, something that caused Xiao Yan's heart to become even more serious occurred once again. While Xiao Yan was blocking the rain of arrows, Lin Feng had already taken the opportunity to circle behind Xiao Yan. An incomparably terrifying aura was rapidly condensing above Lin Feng's head. At this moment, it was time for him to attack. The two brothers were of the same mind. They were attacking from the front and back. They wanted to finish off Xiao Yan in one go. Although Gu Li and the others outside wanted to warn them, it was already too late. Due to the rain of arrows blocking their line of sight, they were simply unable to see the situation inside. However, when they saw Lin Feng's figure, the dose skill above his head had already finished condensing. When they looked at Xiao Yan again, they saw that he was being attacked from both sides. There was no way for him to dodge. This was simply a situation of certain death. Once these two dose skills were to descend, regardless of how many methods Xiao Yan had, he would still be unable to escape death. However, at this moment, these two dose skills were already flying toward Xiao Yan. It was already too late for them to attack now. Lin Feng and Lin Yu were planning to kill Xiao Yan in one go. In response to this, Lin Feng and Lin Yu revealed an extremely sinister smile on their faces. Could it be that you've never heard of our ice seal? Certain death. Chapter 266. Boom. As the two kinds of Do techniques landed, a soul-stirring explosion was immediately emitted from the spot where Xiao Yan had been standing earlier. Wild and violent Do Qi energy swept over this place. The energy fog that was formed after the explosion also spread apart. Everyone present had personally witnessed the moment when Xiao Yan was struck by Lin Feng and Lin Yu's Do skills. Instantly, many people in the crowd felt pity and heartache for Xiao Yan. Even if they were not sincere, there was still some meaning in their actions. Indeed, even with Xiao Yan's talent and divine ability, he was still unable to withstand the combined attacks of two 7-star half-emperors. Even if those two frightening Do skills were to land on some 8-star half-emperors, they would not fare much better, let alone Xiao Yan, a 3-star half-emperor. At this moment, Lin Feng and Lin Yu, who were in the arena, clearly understood this. Those two Do skills were the Do skills that made them famous. Naturally, their power was extraordinary. When the two Do skills landed on Xiao Yan's body, even if he had 10 lives, he would not be able to survive the aftershock of the explosion. Ha 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 ha. Brat who is still wet behind the ears. Do you really think that you can fight against the two of us just because you have some tricks up your sleeve? Humph, you are truly reckless. Lin Feng waved his sleeve and a chilly wind blew past. The clouds and mist scattered. Sure enough, the sky was completely empty. There was nothing left. Seeing this scene, the people outside the arena immediately had no intention of continuing to stay and watch. Many people also flew towards the city in the distance. They had originally come to watch because of Xiao Yan. At the beginning, when they saw Xiao Yan's imposing manner, they had originally thought that Xiao Yan still had a chance to turn the tables. However, at this moment, Xiao Yan had already been destroyed into nothingness by the explosion. Not even a trace of his aura remained. This gave them no reason to continue watching. However, compared to them, Gu Li and Qi Lin, who were outside the arena, stared at the area where the explosion occurred with their turbid old eyes. Their brows were tightly knitted, and their eyes were filled with suspicion. Haha, from the looks of it he should be fine. Yin Xiao is really not simple. At this moment, even Elder Xian, who had been secretly worried for Xiao Yan, was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. As for the two brothers, Lin Feng and Lin Yu, who were in the arena, When they saw the empty space, the joy that had just risen in their hearts because of Yan Zhao's death was immediately covered by a grave expression on their faces. With a grave expression on his face, he used his spiritual energy to carefully scan the ground. However, he was still unable to find that thing. Finally, a different kind of emotion appeared in his heart. Impossible. He withstood our full power. It's impossible for him to do it. No. Impossible. The world in front of them didn't have what they wanted to see. The uniqueness of the storage ring caused it to be difficult to destroy under the pressure of various kinds of energy. As a bandy expert, Xiaoyan had so many high-class Do techniques in his hands. Naturally, the storage ring would not be weak. Even though the attack from the two brothers earlier was not weak, it was still unable to destroy the storage ring. However, since Xiaoyan had died and the storage ring was not in this space, there were only two reasons that made sense. Firstly, the storage ring had been swept into the chaotic flow of space during the big explosion. If this was the case, the storage ring would not be able to be retrieved. However, the important thing was that no chaotic flow of space had been created during the big explosion. Therefore, there was only the second reason. Once Lin Feng and Lin Yu thought of this, their expressions changed. Due to the pressure in their hearts, they stood together. At this moment, when they thought of the second possibility, the expressions on their faces immediately became solemn. Ah! A faint cold laugh was like a cool breeze that was transmitted into everyone's ears, causing the spirits of everyone present to be roused. On the other hand, Lin Feng and Lin Yu were like frosted eggplants. It was as though they had already seen their own death. It's Yan Xiao. He is actually not dead. He is still alive. That's right. It is really Yan Xiao. He is not dead. Moreover, from the looks of it, not only is he not dead, he seems to have become stronger. Xiaoyan once again appeared out of nowhere. When the crowd outside saw him, a deafening exclamation was immediately emitted. Who would have imagined that Xiaoyan, who had been sentenced to death a moment ago, would actually stand above this wild ancient city in a king's manner? At this moment, Xiaoyan was wearing a snow-white long robe. His black hair had already turned into a dense white color in the blink of an eye. With a slight wave of his finger, there was a dazzling fire that shot out. Standing in the air, Xiaoyan lowered his head and looked down at the two figures directly below him. His heart was filled with a dense killing intent. He had always been someone who would not offend others unless offended. However, these two brothers had gone too far. As long as it was a reason for Xiaoyan to kill someone, they had basically committed it. How could Xiaoyan tolerate such behavior? How could Xiaoyan let such people off? Lin Feng and Lin Yu slowly raised their heads with a frightened expression. Xiaoyan's long robe had changed color, but it was as though he had changed into a different person. Not only was his strength even more terrifying, even his aura made them feel that the blood in their bodies was about to be forcefully frozen. Swoosh! A short and sharp sound of rushing wind sounded. This sound was like thunder, like a roar. However, it caused Lin Feng's entire body to be covered in cold sweat. This was because that sound had actually sounded right beside his ear. There have been many people who have threatened me before, but I have never been threatened by anyone. Throughout my journey, you can be considered as the first person who has successfully threatened me. Congratulations. The cold and emotionless voice seemed to have come from the netherworld. Lin Feng felt as though there was a large invisible hand tightly clenching his body in its palm. It could crush him to death at any time as easily as crushing an ant. Suddenly, Lin Feng's pupils abruptly shrank to the size of a needle tip. His originally difficult breathing also turned sluggish at this moment. His entire face instantly turned gray. Xiaoyan's ghost-like speed had simply reached an unimaginable level. This speed had already far surpassed the level of a half-step emperor. What? At this moment on the other side, Lin Yu finally regained his senses. Just a moment ago, his mind was also blank and his eyes were lifeless. If not for the fact that the two of them had their own souls, it was likely that he would not have been able to wake up. Xiaoyan was indifferent. Although the hearts of the two in front of him were filled with regret, reality was ultimately reality. There was no medicine for regret. At the same time, Xiaoyan coldly laughed in his heart. When Lin Feng and Lin Yu were strong, they had treated it as a matter of course to suppress him. Now that they saw him, they were just like a mouse that had seen a cat. Xiao Yan involuntarily let out a miserable smile when he thought of this in his heart. Originally, he did not wish to kill, but he was helpless as everyone was against him. He had originally intended to head south, but it was difficult for him to take even a single step forward. This would be the case in the future. Xiao Yan was still able to use the strength of his Do skills to fight against a half-step emperor. However, once he met a true Do Di or reached that level in the future, he did not know what to do. It was impossible for Guyu to always follow by Xiao Yan's side. It was impossible for him to always help Xiao Yan fight. There would come a day when he would transform into the essence flame for his mission and merge with Xiao Yan's body. At that time, no matter what kind of opponent or enemy Xiao Yan met, he would have to face them alone. Chapter 267. Following a loud explosion sound, the two battered and exhausted figures were sent flying. They stepped on the void and retreated 1,000 miles before they managed to stabilize themselves. After stabilizing their bodies, the two of them still had traces of blood at the corners of their mouths. Their identical old faces were deathly pale. Their hair bands had been broken, and their grayish-white hair was scattered and fluttering in the wind. Some of it was stained with blood, making the two of them look even more pitiful. His long robe had long been shattered by Xiao Yan's fists. Under the green-purple pain, there were broken bone scars. Xiao Yan's brute force had allowed them to taste what was called true dominance. He could finish them off with just his fist. What was the point of using Do Qi? Facing the current Xiao Yan, perhaps even an 8-star half-martial emperor would not be able to do anything to him. Everyone outside of the battleground was already stunned as they watched Xiao Yan in the battleground. Earlier, they were still worried about the latter, afraid that Xiao Yan would be killed by Lin Feng and Lin Yu. However, Lin Feng and Lin Yu were currently being easily toyed with by Xiao Yan. This kind of instantaneous gap really caused them to feel some disbelief. When Xiao Yan used his full strength, he was actually this terrifying. Cough cough. The two brothers were coughing non-stop. Blood was flowing out from the corners of their mouths. In the several hundred rounds of battle just now, Lin Feng and Lin Yu had already exhausted all of their means. They believed that even an 8-star half-martial emperor would not have it easy. However, what caused them to be even more terrified was that Xiao Yan seemed to be completely fine. How is this possible? What kind of monster is he? The strength he possesses is completely inconsistent with his appearance. He is simply not a 3-star half-martial emperor. At this moment, Lin Feng and Lin Yu's hearts were close to going crazy. Fear caused their faces to turn sinister. They were like demonic beasts that were about to go crazy. Outside the battlefield, when Gu Li and Qi Lin saw this, they were also greatly shocked. They also could not understand how Xiao Yan was able to ignore the attacks of 7-star half-martial emperors. This was absolutely not something a 3-star half-martial emperor could do. It was also not something he would have the courage to do. Xiao Yan's strange behavior caused them to have some doubts about Xiao Yan's true strength. Some old fellows with sufficient strength could also use methods to restore themselves to their youth. This kind of person was indeed impossible to distinguish. Perhaps, but in the end, Gu Li shook his head and dismissed the thought. He didn't think that Xiao Yan was the kind of person who would pretend to be a pig to eat a tiger. As for how strong he was, it was likely that no one in the wildlands knew except for Elder Luo. Even Yan Bing was somewhat afraid of Xiao Yan. Alright, let's end our farce here. I still have things to do, so I can't be bothered to play with you. Suddenly, Xiao Yan's indifferent voice was once again transmitted from the empty space around Lin Feng and Lin Yu. This caused the bodies of the both of them to tremble. Their expressions were anxious as they slowly leaned their backs against each other, constantly paying attention to the situation around them. I just obtained this skill not long ago, but using it on the two of you can be considered as me thinking highly of you. After all, it is impossible for ordinary half-martial emperors to even use this skill. Xiao Yan's soft and indifferent voice was only heard by the two brothers in front of him. Their reactions also happened to match Xiao Yan's intention. Lin Feng and Lin Yu's expressions turned sluggish once again. The muscles on half of their faces twitched as if they had been struck by lightning. If even ordinary half-martial emperors were unable to use this Do skill, then didn't this mean that this Do skill had already surpassed the human rank? surpassed the human rank Do skill. That was a spirit rank Do skill. Even the hearts of the two were greatly shaken, but they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. The closer they were to death, the more they would consider every action, and every breath they took was calculated countless times. Large beads of sweat quickly gathered on Lin Feng's forehead. He didn't dare to continue imagining, but Xiao Yan had already appeared in front of him in a flash. The cold smile at the corner of his mouth made him feel as if he was in the depths of hell. His lips opened slightly, and a calm and cold voice quietly entered Lin Feng's ears. Low-level intent rank Do skill, heart-shattering palm. After saying this, Xiao Yan's palms slowly pressed out. Lin Feng and Lin Yu's faces quickly became pale and bloodless. It was as if the scythe of the Grim Reaper was placed on their necks. Crack! Unknowingly, these two old fellows who had lived for countless years only heard the clear sound of bones breaking. Immediately after, they slowly closed their eyes. At the same time, bang! A black figure was violently smashed into the ground. Other than his two legs, his entire head was forcefully pressed into the ground by an invisible force. You are saying, Mo Hui died in the hands of that Yin Xiao? Yes. Mod's muffled response was transmitted from the ground. The other people in the courtyard all had grave expressions as they looked at Mu Han, who was flipping out. No one was willing to say anything. It was likely that even Mod himself did not expect that the excuse he had thought of in front of Mu Han to push all the blame to Xiao Yan would be smashed into the courtyard outside the hall by Mu Han before he could finish speaking. Mu Han did not have the slightest intention of showing mercy to Mod. At the same time, there was no need for him to show mercy. Let's talk about it again. Is it Yin Xiao? The murderous intent in Mu Han's eyes became even denser when he heard Mod's reply. A thought passed through his mind, and the huge spiritual hand that was agglomerated from his spiritual strength once again exerted force, completely crushing Mod's entire body into the ground. To a strong person, the thing that angered them the most was being deceived by others. Mu Han was old and cunning. Moreover, he was one of the best amongst the old foxes. How would it be so easy for him to fall for Mod's trick? This time around, Mod was the one who was seeking death. He just had to come knocking on his door. Yes. However, Wu Mahui would rather die than submit. Perhaps it was because he really had his own confidence, but he did not relent. Every word and sentence he spoke pushed all the blame onto Xiao Yan. He responded to Wu Mahui no matter how many times Mu Han asked. He spoke as though Wu Mahui had never seen him before. It also appeared as though he was being treated unjustly. Wu Mahui's expression changed. Mu Han was also eager to take revenge. His relationship with his disciple was not ordinary. He had always been very protective of Wu Mahui as he was afraid that Wu Mahui would encounter any danger. However, he did not expect that Wu Mahui would still get into trouble in the end. However, since things had already developed to this stage, Wu Mahui was ultimately killed by Xiao Yan. Therefore, he naturally had to blame Xiao Yan for this crime. Although Mod was greatly related to this matter, Yan Bing and the others were present. There was a lack of reason to kill him. After he killed Xiao Yan, he would naturally look for Mod to settle the remaining score. Humph. Get up. I will believe you for now. However, that Yin Xiao dared to kill my disciple. How dare he? How dare you kill my disciple? This old man will definitely slaughter your entire clan. I will cleanse my disciple's body with blood. Mu Han's gloomy old face faced the sky. He clenched his shriveled hands tightly. The terrifying strength caused the entire space to distort continuously. Behind Mu Han, Mod's face was pale as he looked at the furious Mu Han. He thought of Xiao Yan and laughed sinisterly in his heart. Chapter 268. Within the courtyard, Mu Han's expression was gloomy as he deeply inhaled a mouthful of cold air. After keeping the jade bottle in his hand, his venomous snake-like eyes instantly stared at Mod, causing the latter's heart to shudder. A shriveled hand, which was like a ghost's claw, extended out from nowhere. A suction force erupted from the center of his palm, and Mod, who was not far away, immediately lost control of his body. Soon after, Mu Han grabbed Mod's neck. Speak. Where is Yin Xiao now? Mu Han's tone was ice cold. Every word was filled with incomparable murderous intent. At this moment, if Xiao Yan was in front of him, he he would have already been torn into pieces and turned into ashes. However, this murderous intent was exactly what Mod wanted. Both of his hands strenuously hugged Muhan's claw that was choking him. Mod had previously indicated for the latter to release him. However, the result was not good. Muhan's face was still ice cold. Hence, Mod could only tightly hug Muhan's wrist in order to force himself to speak. Xiaoyan is in the wildlands. Bang. Before Mod could finish his words with difficulty, his body was violently thrown out by Muhan. It directly smashed through the courtyard wall and rubbed against the ground for some distance before it finally came to a stop after smashing into a huge rock. The frightening strength caused nearly 1/3 of the bones in Mod's body to be forcefully broken. Although this was not enough to cause any substantial damage to this 3-star half-emperor, it still caused Mod's face to turn pale. Humph. Muhan narrowed his old eyes and slowly shifted his gaze away from Mod's body. Given Muhan's shrewdness, he would definitely not completely believe Wu Mahui's death no matter what Mod said. Even though he believed that Wu Mahui was killed by Xiaoyan, Mod could not escape the responsibility. Naturally, Muhan would not let him off so easily. Of course, Muhan also knew that what he had done earlier could not cause too much harm to Mod. However, he would not let Mod off either. To him, this was only the beginning. He believed that Mod would still seek his help regarding Yan Xiao. Thus, he would beat Mod at his own game. Once he eliminated Yan Xiao, he would personally kill Mod and take revenge for his beloved disciple. Yan Bing and the other two saw Muhan looking at them. Zhang Hao was the weakest, so he naturally hid behind Yan Bing. Although Old Freak who was frightened by Muhan's gaze, he could not be like Zhang Hao. Of cold sweat unceasingly. Body. As compared to Old Freak who, Yan Bing was truly worthy of being a peak late-stage half-martial emperor expert. She could be said to be a half-step 9-star half-martial emperor. When she looked to Muhan, she was more or less confident. Even though her confidence was much better than Old Freak whose, her deep seriousness caused the crowd to be shocked by Muhan's strength. Ed of Yen. Today, I will avenge my disciple. Muhan coldly stared at Yan Bing and the other two. He completely ignored the expression on Yan Bing's face. His tone was as if he was giving an order. As the strongest person present, he had the strength to say such words. Moreover, no one would refute him. No one dared to refute him. Even Yan Bing was not allowed to do so. In Muhan's heart, Xiaoyan had already become the #1 person that must be killed. Therefore, when he did things, he was swift and decisive. When he spoke, he was anxious to have Xiaoyan appear before him and let him kill him. Hearing Muhan's words, Old Freak Hu and Zhang Hao were slightly surprised. Yan Bing, on the other hand, was expressionless. The three of them did not do anything because of Muhan's words. Old Freak Hu slightly frowned. Muhan wanted to kill Xiaoyan. This was something that all of them wanted to see. However, Xiaoyan was not so easy to kill. He had the Alchemist Guild and the Yunin Pavilion. Even if Muhan was a rank 3 formation master and a 9-star half-emperor, when placed in front of the Yunin Pavilion, it would still be the same. Not enough. Now that Xiaoyan was under their protection, who would be able to touch Xiaoyan? Needless to say, Xiaoyan also had a layer of relationship with old Luo behind him. Although Muhan did not know about this, Mod could use this opportunity to make Muhan attack Xiaoyan directly and kill Xiaoyan. However, if he did that, they would also lose their lives along with Muhan. The prestige of the Yunin Pavilion could not be violated. Even if Muhan was a 9-star half-emperor. Although Muhan was known as the second strongest person in the ancient city of Wildlands, that was without mentioning the Yunin Pavilion. Cough cough. Teacher Mu, I'm afraid we cannot agree to your request. Mod was like a cockroach that could not be killed. He was defeated time and time again. However, he was always defeated by Muhan. Whoosh. As soon as Mod spoke, he felt a gust of cold wind blowing in front of him. Immediately after, Mod's body was sent flying out uncontrollably. If you say another word, this old man will kill you first. But, just as Mod opened his mouth, Muhan's figure flashed and his shriveled hand grabbed Mod's head. He exerted force with his 5 fingers, and left 5 deep fingerprints on Mod's head. If Muhan exerted more force, MOD's skull would instantly explode like a watermelon. You are courting death. Don't blame this old man for being ruthless. Muhan's eyes were cold. Aside from Yanbing, the rest of the people present were all trash. He did not need to care about anyone. Elder Luo. Muhan's expression finally changed when he heard these two words. Elder Luo was an absolute name. The person behind Yan Xiao is Elder Luo. Before entering the lightning pool, none of us can touch him. No one can kill him and no one dares to kill him. At this moment, Muhan's expression changed. He looked at Yanbing. These words came from his mouth. Muhan looked at MOD in disdain. His eyes were filled with disdain. He loosened his grip. The moment MOD's body fell, Muhan's arm jerked and slammed heavily on MOD's abdomen. Along with a loud bang, MOD's body turned into a pile of mud. He fell heavily on the ground and could not get up. Muhan looked at Yanbing again. Although his tone was still cold, there was an obvious change in his attitude compared to when he was talking to MOD. Tell me all the information you have about Yan Xiao. I want the most complete information, including his identity. You should know the importance of this. You are also afraid? Yanbing looked at Muhan and said with a cold smile. There are some people that even the forces behind you cannot touch. Muhan narrowed his eyes and warned her. He did not get to where he was today by being reckless. Hey, you can rest assured. He does not have any special identity. He just befriended Elder Xian from the Yunin Pavilion and gave a piece of mysterious iron to Elder Luo. That's all. They have always been in a business relationship. Muhan's eyes brightened slightly. He was still skeptical of Yanbing's words. However, he still nodded his head in the end and said in a calm tone, "That's right. That would be the best." Chapter 269. Xiao Yan randomly threw the 2 storage rings into his storage ring in the air. His eyes once again glanced at the 2 corpses in front of him. His heart involuntarily felt shocked by the strength of the heart-shattering palm. The attack of the heart-shattering palm had shattered the bodies and souls of Lin Feng and Lin Yu. Their spirits had been destroyed. They could be said to be completely dead. It was likely that no one would be able to escape the fate of certain death under such a palm. Is this the strength of an E-class Do technique? It is really frightening. It was difficult to imagine that if He Mu had used this move on Xiao Yan in the ginseng space back then, it was likely that Xiao Yan would not have survived until now. TSK. You are making a fuss over nothing. Do you really think that this is the full strength of the heart-shattering palm? The strength that you have displayed is at the very most at the level of a Ling-class Do technique. While Xiao Yan was feeling shocked by the strength of the heart-shattering palm, Guyu in his body did not forget to pour a bucket of cold water on Xiao Yan. Moreover, you are only able to do this after borrowing my strength. Moreover, if you do not possess the frightening physical body of the Dragon Phoenix bloodline, and have so many heavenly flames protecting your body, it would be impossible for you to use the heart-shattering palm with your strength. The first requirement for practicing the heart-shattering palm was that the practitioner's physical body must be sufficiently strong. This was because the process of practicing the heart-shattering palm would be similar to Xiao Yan's octane blast. It would agglomerate a hidden force within Xiao Yan's body. However, the strength of this hidden force was even more frightening than the octane blast. Hence, if Xiao Yan's physical body was not tough enough, resulting in Xiao Yan being unable to control this hidden force, the final result would be that Xiao Yan would be unable to suppress the hidden force within his body. This would cause the hidden force to explode within his body. Just thinking about it, the pain involved was not something that Xiao Yan could endure. With the current Xiao Yan's strength, it was naturally impossible for him to use the heart-shattering palm. If he were to truly use an E-class Do technique, even with Luo Ao's strength, it would be extremely difficult for him. Xiao Yan was only able to barely use it by borrowing Guyu's strength earlier. Ugh! It looks like this heart-shattering palm might be a good treasure, but it is useless if I keep it in my body. I don't know when I will be able to truly unleash its strength. Xiao Yan could only sigh. White Heavenly Flame of Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan. 2. During this period of time, anyone who met Xiao Yan's gaze would take a couple of steps back in fear. Quite a number of people's expressions instantly turned pale under Xiao Yan's gaze. Their hearts were greatly shocked as they fled out of the crowd as though they were fleeing for their lives. Xiaoyan felt helpless in the face of this. He moved and arrived in front of Gu Li and Qi Lin. Xiaoyan first greeted Elder Xian by the side. The two of them had a tacit understanding. Compared to Gu Li, Elder Xian was even clearer about Xiaoyan's strength. TSK, I really did not expect that you have actually hidden your strength. You actually possess a strength comparable to a 3-star half-emperor. Qi Lin and Gu Li exchanged glances with each other as they sensed the powerful aura on Xiaoyan's body. Their eyes were surprised as they looked at Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan smiled when he heard this. He gently shook his head. A thought passed through his heart, and the qi within his body gradually began to scatter. He smiled and said to Gu Li. He smiled at Gu Li and said, "Haha, how could I possibly possess the strength of a 7-star half-emperor? I'm merely relying on a secret technique of mine. However, I'm afraid that I won't be able to use it again for a long time." As he said those words, Xiaoyan's eyes flickered slightly. His gaze imperceptibly swept past some people in the crowd. They were all people who still had greed for Xiaoyan. Sure enough, after hearing Xiaoyan's words, those people's eyes that were hidden under their robes or hats immediately lit up. Xiaoyan directly chose to ignore those people. Now that he possessed 2 void lightning pool invitations, the troubles that Xiaoyan would have to face would increase. The people before him were only a small number. What Xiaoyan would have to face would be even more frightening existences. However, Xiaoyan did not have the heart to continue waiting. He could not possibly calmly wait for those people to come to him by themselves. Even though he did not wish to fight, the matter before him could only be settled by fighting. He needed to use the most violent method to dispel the thoughts in those people's hearts. Using violence to curb violence, this was the simplest and most direct method that Xiaoyan could think of. After a few violent battles, not only would these people view Xiaoyan's strength highly, they would also treat Xiaoyan as a true expert. In their hearts, they would also feel a kind of fear towards Xiaoyan. That was the fear that only experts possessed. Only by doing this would he be able to eliminate all the troubles surrounding Xiaoyan. After chatting with Gu Li and the others for a while, Xiaoyan greeted them and once again turned his gaze towards those who had not left. Xiaoyan's toes tapped on the void, and his figure swept across the sky. From high above, he looked down at the crowd. Because of Xiaoyan's actions, everyone's gaze was focused on Xiaoyan. Suddenly, Xiaoyan waved his sleeves forcefully and the wind blew. Xiaoyan's gaze swept across the crowd. His face was fierce and his eyes were overbearing. "Everyone, you have all seen the result of this battle. Using a secret technique, I barely defeated Lin Feng and Lin Yu. Therefore now I have 2 void lightning pool invitations in my hands." Everyone present immediately turned into an uproar after Xiaoyan's words sounded. The reason most of them had remained until now was because of the void lightning pool invitation. I know that everyone also covets the void lightning pool invitations. Therefore, in order to satisfy everyone's desires, I can give each of you a chance. Hearing this, many people in the crowd curled their lips. Since Xiaoyan had said this, it meant that he was going to make friends through martial arts again. Other than defeating Xiaoyan, it was basically impossible to use any other method to obtain the void lightning pool invitations from Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan seemed to understand the crowd's thoughts. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile. His gaze slowly swept across the crowd and he said with a smile, "Everyone, don't worry. In order to give you a chance to obtain the void lightning pool invitations, my request is not high. As long as you can injure me within 100 moves, you can take the void lightning pool invitations." Wow! Xiaoyan's words caused an uproar among the crowd. Xiaoyan's words were too arrogant and conceited. Although Xiaoyan's strength was not weak and he could fight against an 8-star half-emperor with his full strength, there was no lack of 7-star half-emperors among the half-emperors present. Even if Xiaoyan's strength was tyrannical, injuring him within 100 moves was something that a 7-star half-emperor was completely qualified to do. Xiaoyan's words were completely equivalent to giving away the void lightning pool invitations to them for free. Hee, everyone, don't be too happy. The void lightning pool invitation is right here, waiting for you to come and get it. However, it's not for free. I'm sure you've all seen my rules. As long as you can take out enough spirit coins or treasures, The Void Lightning Pool invitation will be in my hands, waiting for you to come and get it. From now on, everyone can come and challenge me within 5 days. Xiaoyan coldly shouted as he stood in the sky. Although the battle earlier had consumed a lot of Xiaoyan's energy, he was still able to endure it. With the assistance of medicinal pellets, Xiaoyan was still able to maintain his peak state for a short period of time. I want to be the first to challenge you. Scram. You're only a 6-star half-emperor. It's better for me to go first. I'm an upright 7-star half-emperor. Humph. Let me do it. So what if you're a 7-star half-emperor? I'm a mid-7-star half-emperor. Brat, you're only an early 7-star half-emperor. Scram. Bang. Before he finished speaking, the fist and the palm collided. The entire sky was in chaos because of Xiaoyan's words. As for the source of all the commotion, Xiaoyan was sitting in the sky with a smile on his face as he calmly recovered. Chapter 270. The Sky Annihilation Steps had a total of 3 major realms. They were Wind Ripple, Cloud Soaring, and Sky Riding. The 3 major realms were further divided into 9 minor realms. They were Entry, Initial, and Advanced. The current Xiaoyan's practice of the Sky Extinction Step had already reached the initial success stage of the Wind Movement stage from the initial entry stage. If one were to talk about it, the time he had spent during this period was merely a couple of months. As the Sky Annihilation Step slowly increased, Xiaoyan's speed allowed him to run amok among half-martial emperors. When he was among half-martial emperors, it was as if he had stepped into a realm where no one could stop him. But as time passed, the half-martial emperors that Xiaoyan faced weren't that easy to deal with. After some 7-star half-martial emperors used their agility do skills, their speed wasn't much slower than Xiaoyan's. Even when facing 8-star half-martial emperors like Old Freak who, Xiaoyan felt that it was quite strenuous. He wasn't able to deal with them as easily as before. Xiaoyan didn't find this strange. His strength came from his do skills. Those 7-star half-martial emperors also possessed various kinds of do skills. When they went all out, it was naturally difficult for Xiaoyan to deal with them. This world was fair. It wasn't possible that only Xiaoyan could obtain high-level do skills. Strength wasn't a monopoly of a single person. Everything had to be fought for. Unknowingly, Xiaoyan had already set up the Void Battle Arena in the sky above the desolate ancient city for 3 days. During these 3 days, the number of people that challenged Xiaoyan was also more than enough. In a short 3 days, Xiaoyan had already successively accepted dozens of battles. Among them, the majority were 7-star half-martial emperors. It couldn't be helped. The temptation that Xiaoyan gave was really too eye-catching. The Void Lightning Pool invitation was currently the most eye-catching thing in the desolate ancient city. As long as someone obtained it, they would think of a way to hide it to prevent it from bringing endless trouble to themselves. However, Xiaoyan on the other hand did the opposite. Not only did he not dodge, he instead swaggered out this thing, which was sufficient to cause everyone's eyes to turn red with envy. This clearly showed that he was purposely leading others to make a mistake. The requirement of 100 moves made everyone who heard the news go crazy. As long as they could injure Xiaoyan within 100 moves, they would be able to obtain a Void Lightning Pool invitation. This kind of temptation was like a beautiful woman with a hot body deliberately seducing men. These guys who were crazy for strength would naturally throw themselves at it. It was as if the Void Lightning Pool invitation was already in their pockets. It was unknown whether their actions were like taking something from their pockets, or like moths flying into a flame. In 3 days, Xiaoyan had fought almost all the 7-star half-martial emperors in the desolate ancient city. This was a very exhausting matter. Fortunately, Xiaoyan's soul strength had reached the late emperor realm. In addition to his identity as a rank 2 alchemist, Xiaoyan was always able to recover his soul strength and do qi in the shortest amount of time. Although there were many people who challenged Xiaoyan, since he could endure dozens of battles and keep the Void Lightning Pool invitation, this meant that in these 3 days of battles, no one was able to injure Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan, on the other hand, was constantly benefiting from the battles. Not only did Xiaoyan gain a lot from the battles, even his control of the Sky Annihilation Step had become more proficient. With just a thought, Xiaoyan would be able to flash anywhere in the empty space. In an instant, Xiaoyan was able to flash 5 times in the empty space and return to his original position. Moreover, he would leave behind clear and solid afterimages at the positions where he flashed. From the outside world's point of view, it appeared as though 5 Xiaoyans had suddenly appeared in the empty space. 4 of them turned into distorted afterimages after a breeze blew past and gradually disappeared in the empty space. Only now did the crowd realize that the 4 Xiaoyans that suddenly appeared were afterimages. With such terrifying speed, it was no wonder that Xiaoyan dared to boast in public. However, even so, the battles continued. The allure of the Void Lightning Pool invitation was enormous. Even among those who challenged Xiaoyan, there was no lack of people who understood Xiaoyan's strength. They knew that his speed was terrifying and knew that their chances of injuring Xiaoyan were very slim. However, they were still willing to give it a try. Perhaps they would encounter the moment when Xiaoyan was not in his best condition. Perhaps they would have a chance to injure Xiaoyan. They did not wish to kill him, but it would be enough if they could injure Xiaoyan a little. Unfortunately, the moment when Xiaoyan would not be in his best condition, which they were anticipating in their hearts, did not arrive. As for ganging up on Xiaoyan, it was even more unrealistic. Putting aside the deep rifts between them, Xiaoyan's puppet alone was enough to deal with most of them. None of them were willing to fight the North King alone. Furthermore, Xiaoyan was backed by the 2 largest factions in the ancient wilderness city, the Alchemist Guild and the Union Pavilion. These people were naturally not foolish enough to become enemies with the Union Pavilion. In a few days, Xiaoyan had already earned more than 1,000,000 spirit coins. This amount was already considered extremely terrifying among half-step emperors. Among these people, what surprised Xiaoyan the most was that there were actually people who used lightning invitation cards as wagers. This allowed Xiaoyan to add 3 more lightning invitation cards to his wealth in the past 3 days. In other words, other than his lightning invitation, the current Xiaoyan still possessed 4 other lightning invitations. There were less than 30 people who could enter the lightning pool in the empty realm. Currently, 1/6 of the 30 Void Lightning Pool invitations had fallen into Xiaoyan's hands. It was hard to imagine what kind of scene Xiaoyan would have to face if the people in the city found out about this. Fortunately, on the 4th day, Xiaoyan's Sky Extinction Step finally welcomed the long-awaited breakthrough. The Sky Extinction Step had successfully advanced from the initial stage to the advanced stage. This also meant that Xiaoyan's speed would soar once again. At the same time that he broke through, Xiaoyan displayed the changes that had occurred after his breakthrough to the crowd. With the Sky Extinction Step, Xiaoyan no longer had the slightest bit of apprehension when facing a 7-star half-step emperor. In fact, Xiaoyan even took off that 7-star half-step emperor's robe in front of everyone. This caused the latter to fly into a rage out of humiliation toward Xiaoyan. If it wasn't for the fact that his strength was limited, Xiaoyan would have already been dismembered by him. Before the current Xiaoyan, the speed of a 7-star half-step emperor was enough for Xiaoyan to repeat every action. With such speed, anyone below the 8-star half-step emperor level would be crushed by Xiaoyan. When the 5th day passed, the smile on Xiaoyan's face became even more brilliant. That was because at this moment there were 2 more Void Lightning Pool invitations in his hands. In other words, Xiaoyan now possessed a total of 7 Void Lightning Pool invitations. 7 Void Lightning Pool invitations. This was enough to make the entire ancient city of Savage rise in an instant. However, Xiaoyan put them all away with a calm expression on his face. It was as if he had never held an extra lightning invitation card. However, in Xiaoyan's heart, his face was already filled with an excited smile. 7 Void Lightning Pool invitations. To Xiaoyan, this was another enormous fortune. Chapter 271. 5 days quietly flowed by. For most of the half-emperors, this little bit of time was simply the blink of an eye. However, for a portion of the half-emperors, these 5 days were more like a chase competition. However, at the end of this chase competition, none of the half-emperors who had participated had obtained the slightest benefit from it. In the end, all of the benefits had been taken away by the organizer of this competition. 7 Void Lightning Pool invitation. 1,000,000 spirit coins and the advance of the wind movement stage from the Sky Extinction Step. Each of these were the benefits that Xiaoyan had obtained within these short 5 days. As for the others, forget about obtaining any benefits. They were already burning incense in their hearts as long as they did not lose too much. Who would have imagined that a seemingly simple request to exchange blows would ultimately result in these half-emperors being unable to use their strength regardless of how powerful and frightening their do-chi was when they were truly faced with it. After 100 exchanges, they could only angrily return. Xiaoyan wore a smile on his face as he kept the wager that his final opponent had handed over into his storage ring. When he saw the depressed expression on his opponent's face, Xiaoyan involuntarily laughed in his heart. However, his face still appeared to be extremely indifferent. Humph! Yin Xiao, you have really not wasted these 5 days. Just based on the benefits that you have obtained from us within these 5 days, it is likely that it is more than what some of the clans earn in an entire year. At this moment, there was finally someone who could not endure it any longer and angrily reprimanded Xiaoyan. The profits that Xiaoyan had obtained during these 5 days was something that would cause them to go crazy just thinking about it. Following this half-emperor's words, the group of half-emperors behind him also followed and angrily reprimanded Xiaoyan. These people were all opponents that Xiaoyan had encountered during these few days. They had already suffered losses at Xiaoyan's hands. At this moment, they were naturally merciless when they spoke. Xiaoyan coldly laughed in response to this. He did not force these people to fight with him, nor did he forcefully snatch their things. Those wagers were all taken out by them. If they did not have confidence in their own strength, they would not have easily attacked Xiaoyan. Now that they did not have the ability to obtain the Void Lightning Pool invitation, they instead blamed Xiaoyan. It was no wonder that Xiaoyan would speak with disdain. Humph! This Yin Xiao has obtained quite a lot of benefits over the past 5 days. During this period, he has even obtained a few Void Lightning Pool invitation. From what I see, why don't we all attack together to take down Yin Xiao? After all, he currently has quite a number of treasures on him. As long as we open his storage ring, we don't have to worry that the things inside will not be enough for us to split. Seeing the disdainful cold smile on Xiaoyan's face, someone from the crowd immediately spoke out. The meaning behind his words was to push Xiaoyan to the forefront of the storm. It was obvious that he had the intention to take revenge. After these words sounded, everyone turned their gazes towards Xiaoyan in unison. Over the past few days, they had witnessed Xiaoyan defeating his opponents time and time again. They had also seen Xiaoyan keep all the wagers into the storage ring on his hand. In addition to the Void Lightning Pool invitation, these things were sufficient for them to make a huge profit. Immediately, the gazes that everyone used to look at Xiaoyan could not help but change. Humph! Why? Your skills are inferior to mine, and all of you have been defeated. Now you want to push all the blame onto me and want to split my storage ring. All of you are really audacious. After his words sounded, Xiaoyan suddenly cried out sternly. The aura within his body instantly erupted. A circle of invisible do-chi pressure swiftly swept out in all directions. Xiaoyan knew that the half-emperor experts in front of him were not easy to deal with. With his own strength, he was indeed no match for them. Hence, after he completely unleashed the aura within his body, Xiaoyan suddenly waved his sleeve while the half-emperor expert's expressions changed. A black light flashed and the Northern King's mountain-like figure appeared. The moment he appeared, his strength of a 6-star half-emperor coupled with his overbearing aura immediately caused the half-emperor experts to take a step back. On the other side, Guli's group and Elder Xian's brows furrowed. They didn't expect these guys to be so desperate. They knew that they couldn't do anything to Xiaoyan, so they gathered together to force Xiaoyan to hand over the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation. However, how could Xiaoyan be someone who would allow others to coerce him? The more these fellows pressured him, the more overbearing Xiaoyan would be. Strength in numbers would indeed cause an ordinary person to feel fear in their hearts and have no choice but to obey. However, Xiaoyan was different. He had always been amenable to coaxing but not coercion. The more these people acted in this manner, the final outcome would likely not be good. Guli's group looked at each other and nodded slightly. There was no need to mention Guli's group. As Xiaoyan was the chief alchemist of the Alchemist Guild, they naturally couldn't ignore him. As for Elder Xian, he was personally sent by Luo Jin to protect Xiaoyan using his status as the owner of the Union Pavilion. Now that the situation had developed to this point, he naturally had to act. Immediately, when the Northern King appeared, the three of them also moved. The three 8-star half-martial emperors flashed and instantly appeared around Xiaoyan. The auras of 8-star half-martial emperors instantly spread out. Their powerful and overbearing auras were even more powerful than the Northern King's. When the group of half-martial emperors came in contact with these frightening auras, their expressions immediately turned grave. Just Xiaoyan alone was enough to give them a headache. Now that the Northern King, Gu Li and Elder Xian had joined the fray, they naturally didn't dare to act rashly. Although they didn't dare to act rashly, they had the advantage in numbers. They were unwilling to give up on the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation. Just like that, the two sides stood in the sky. Neither side moved. In an instant, the group of half-martial emperors in the sky stood in confrontation with Xiaoyan's group. Neither side was willing to relent, but neither side took half a step forward. After an unknown amount of time, Xiaoyan, the only person who could change the situation, finally chuckled. With a thought, he instantly withdrew his aura. He looked at the group of half-martial emperors with an indifferent expression. At this moment, the group of half-martial emperors also looked at Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan's footsteps lightly moved, and he slowly walked to the front of the group of half-martial emperors. Sweeping his gaze over them, he said, "It seems that everyone's hearts are still not wavering in the slightest. I must praise everyone for their perseverance." After those words were spoken, the group of half-martial emperors all frowned and looked at each other. Among them, a 7-star half-martial emperor coldly looked at Xiaoyan and said, "Humph, Yan Xiao, you should hand over the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation as soon as possible. We can let you take the rest. However, if you continue to be stubborn, this old man guarantees that you will not be able to obtain anything." "Oh, is that so? Then why didn't you attack earlier?" Xiaoyan laughed coldly. His face was filled with disdain as he asked in return. Xiaoyan's words caused that 7-star bandit to be at a loss for words. His old face revealed an embarrassed expression. It was not that they were unwilling to attack. It was just that the experts beside Xiaoyan caused them to feel fear in their hearts, making it difficult for them to move. Otherwise, they would have attacked Xiaoyan in a group. Xiaoyan sneered once again. He coldly stared at the 7-star half-martial emperor and sneered, "Next time, you must think before you speak. Otherwise, you will easily be defeated." After those words were spoken, Gu Li and the other two beside Xiaoyan immediately sneered. Without waiting for the half-martial emperor to refute, Xiaoyan spoke once again. "Everyone, I know that if we continue to confront each other like this, no one will be able to obtain the Void Lightning Pool invitation in my hands. Even if one of you can obtain it in the end, it will definitely be the most powerful people who will have the opportunity. This is too unfair to the other people who have contributed. Thus, I have a method that will allow everyone to obtain the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation. I'll say this in advance. This time, there is no need for everyone to fight." After Xiaoyan's words left his mouth, everyone present immediately stood up. Although Xiaoyan's words were unclear, the meaning within them was quite similar to what they were thinking. Just like what Xiaoyan had said, even if they attacked Xiaoyan and obtained his storage ring, only a few of them would be able to obtain benefits in the end. Most of them would be unrewarded people who had contributed. Not for anything else, but for strength. At this moment, Xiaoyan had actually spoken such words that moved their hearts once again. Naturally, some changes would occur in their hearts. They had come for the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation. If Xiaoyan's method could allow everyone to obtain the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation, it would naturally not matter whether they fought for it or not. After all, even if they fought for it, they might not be able to obtain the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation. Since that was the case, they might as well see what Xiaoyan's method was. Noticing everyone's gazes that were filled with surprise, Xiaoyan smiled once again. His fingers rubbed the storage ring as he secretly thought of something. Chapter 272. Everyone, since everyone wants the lightning invitation in my possession, but there's a limit to the number of lightning invitation and it's difficult to distribute them, then for the sake of giving everyone a chance to obtain a Void Lightning invitation, as the owner of the lightning invitation, I've made a decision." Xiaoyan looked around, and his bright eyes slowly swept past the half-step emperors. Xiao Yan's words caused their gazes to converge on him. Even though they didn't know what Xiao Yan's decision was, they knew that Xiao Yan would definitely tell them himself. Gu Li and the others beside Xiao Yan looked at each other, and they silently withdrew the auras they'd released. However, their gazes were still vigilantly watching the surroundings. Xiao Yan was able to face these half-step emperors with ease, but they had no choice but to be cautious. After a short moment, a wisp of a smile appeared on the corners of Xiao Yan's mouth, and he swept his gaze through the surroundings once more. He spread his arms wide open, and he successfully converged the gazes of everyone present once more. After that, he spoke unhurriedly with a smile on his face. In 10 days, I'll be auctioning off the lightning invitation and some treasures in my possession in the form of an auction. I'll hand over everything that someone auctions in the auction to that person in the most secretive manner possible. There will absolutely be no third person who knows about it. Xiao Yan's voice was like thunder, and it reverberated through the heavens and the earth. Everyone's minds buzzed when they heard it, but most of them ridiculed and sneered at Xiao Yan's methods. The things he obtained from them were actually going to be auctioned off in front of all these half-step emperors. No matter who saw such an action, they would probably be furious in their hearts. On the other hand, Xiao Yan didn't avoid it at all. No matter how furious those half-step emperors were, he still had a calm expression on his face. Amongst the things he wanted to auction off, there were indeed many things that these half-step emperors had lost to him. However, at the same time, there were also some things that Xiao Yan had obtained from the battles in the past. It was not difficult for Xiao Yan to imagine the consequences of a group of half-martial emperors getting angry. Therefore, he would not go overboard this time. Of course, although they were enraged, there were also a few people who were happy in their hearts. These people were basically people who had never acted against Xiao Yan. Hence, other than the Void Lightning Pool invitation, they didn't really care about anything else that Xiao Yan auctioned off. Seeing the situation in the battleground, Gu Li and the other two involuntarily frowned as they looked at Xiao Yan. The result of inciting everyone's anger was something that Xiao Yan should be clearer than them in his heart. However, his current actions were developing in this direction. If Xiao Yan really angered these people, even if he had the support of the Alchemist Guild and the Yunin Pavilion, he definitely wouldn't be able to withstand their murderous intent. After all, there were dozens of half-step emperors here. If it was under normal circumstances, it would be easy to deal with them. However, once they were united, the power that would erupt from them would be devastating. Xiao Yan noticed Gu Li and the other two's gazes. However, he smiled faintly and nodded, indicating that they could rest assured. Due to their inexplicable confidence in Xiao Yan, the three of them withdrew their gazes with suspicion. However, they couldn't help but feel a little worried in their hearts. Everyone, it's still early. It's unnecessary to say anything now. As for what I will auction off, you will naturally know when the time comes as long as you are present. As for now, I haven't rested for 5 days. I'm a little tired. Then, I won't accompany you for now. See you at the Tianyan auction house in 10 days. As he spoke, Xiao Yan used all his strength to stretch. Immediately, his entire body revealed an aura of exhaustion. Before everyone could open their mouths to say anything, a glint suddenly flashed across Xiao Yan's eyes. His feet moved slightly and wind formed under his feet. His body flashed and suddenly disappeared from the empty sky. The Northern King, who had been standing still like a metal tower, also disappeared at the same time. Only when Xiao Yan's figure disappeared in a flash did Gu Li and the other two hastily look for the wind to check for Xiao Yan's aura. However, the thing that caused the three of them to feel shocked was that Xiao Yan's aura had completely disappeared from this empty space after he disappeared once again. This brat. We haven't even spoken to him. Why did he disappear again? Gu Li's old face was filled with helplessness. Beside him, Qi Lin and Elder Xian were also frowning. They also felt incomparably serious about Xiao Yan's terrifying speed. Right now on the surface, Xiao Yan's strength was still that of a 3-star half-martial emperor. However, his speed was already so terrifying. It was hard to imagine. If his strength increased, at that time, when he unleashed his full speed, wouldn't he be able to completely disregard even 8-star half-martial emperors like them? At this very moment, The 3 8-star half-martial emperors were deeply shocked by Xiao Yan's strength. However, while they were comparing Xiao Yan to an 8-star half-martial emperor in their hearts, they didn't know that more than one 8-star half-martial emperor had died by Xiao Yan's hands. Sigh, that's enough. That brat Yan Xiao has already left. There's no need for us to continue staying here. The two of you, I still have matters to attend to in my pavilion. I won't disturb you any longer. After Xiao Yan left, Elder Xian sighed with emotion. Then he said those words to Gu Li and Qi Lin and left first. Afterwards, Gu Li and Qi Lin and the surrounding half-martial emperors also left one after another. After the crowd left, in a short period of time, another shocking piece of news rapidly spread through the entire ancient city as if it had grown wings. In 10 days, Yan Xiao would be holding an auction for the lightning invitation at the Heavenly Cloud Auction House. Publicly auctioning the Void Lightning Pool invitation was something that had never happened before. Thus, once the news spread, all the powers in the desolate land began to move. In less than half a day, not only the entire ancient city, even some of the surrounding cities and towns had heard of this shocking news. In the Union Pavilion, Elder Xian had personally delivered the news. Thus, Luo Jin naturally knew what Xiao Yan had said. Oh, he's going to hold an auction? And it's going to be held at the Heavenly Cloud Auction House? Hearing Elder Xian's words, Luo Jin was also surprised for a moment. However, he immediately smiled and nodded. His hand gently waved the jade fan in his hand as he softly smiled and said, "Good. Since he wants to hold an auction, then we'll help him again. We'll ensure that the auction is in order. This way, we can more or less help him solve some unnecessary problems." Elder Xian immediately nodded when he heard this. He raised his eyes to look at Luo Jin and smiled. Haha, this old man has already arranged for it. Old Song is in charge of the auction house. I don't think anyone will dare to make a move there. At that time, he will be in charge of the order of the auction house. Hearing this, Luo Jin raised his eyebrows slightly. When he heard Elder Xian mention that old man, he finally remembered him. Thinking of that old man's temper in his heart, Luo Jin could not help but bitterly smile and shake his head. With him around, there were indeed not many people who would dare to make a move at the auction house. Although everything has been prepared, it is still better to ask Song Gang to pay attention. MOD's group will definitely not let Yan Xiao off so easily. The influence of this auction is not small, and it is unavoidable that they will do something. At that time, we must keep a close eye on them when we see them. Although Luo Jin had always been at ease with Elder Xian handling matters, Luo Jin still did not dare to be careless when it came to Xiao Yan's matter. He felt that Xiao Yan's actions this time were indeed a little too big. No one knew what kind of people he would attract when the time came. When Elder Xian heard this, a strange look involuntarily flashed across his turbid old eyes. He immediately responded and did not disturb Luo Jin any further. He silently took 2 steps back. The figure under Elder Xian's long robe gradually distorted until it completely disappeared. Chapter 273. What did you say? That Yan Xiao is actually going to hold an auction 10 days later? Moreover, the auction item is the Void Lightning Pool invitation. In a living room, Mu Han was sitting on the main seat with a gloomy face. Due to the rage in his heart, the lustrous teacup in his hand had been crushed into powder. The tea was like water arrows that shot out in all directions. The accessories around Mu Han were all pierced by the water arrows. This scene caused the hearts of MOD and the other 3 to freeze. They did not expect that the news that Mu Zhuang's servant had brought back would actually cause them to be so shocked. Now that Mu Han and MOD's group had reached a common point, they were all on the same boat in order to kill Xiao Yan. Their goal was only Xiao Yan. Following the initial plan of the few of them, MOD and the 3 others naturally stayed in the Mu Zhuang. In this place, it was very difficult for the people in the outside world to know their exact whereabouts. They could use the people in the Mu Zhuang to monitor Xiao Yan at all times. At this moment, in front of Mu Han, there was a middle-aged man in plain clothes who was half kneeling on the ground. He had a respectful expression as he reported to Mu Han the various news that he had heard from the outside. Currently, Xiao Yan's reputation was becoming more and more popular by the day in the ancient wildlands. The most recent news was that Xiao Yan had announced in front of a group of half-emperors that he would be holding an auction for the Lightning Pool invitation in 10 days' time at the Heavenly Cloud Auction House. This news was extremely shocking to the various clans and forces in the ancient wildlands. The Void Lightning Pool was difficult to open, and the Lightning Pool invitation was the only key to enter the Void Lightning Pool. There were only a total of 30 Lightning Pool invitation. In the past few hundred years, for the sake of obtaining the Void Lightning Pool invitation cards, countless half-martial emperors had gone crazy over them. However, even with that being the case, there had never been a single person who possessed more than 3 Void Lightning Pool invitation cards. This was because the attraction of the Lightning Pool invitation would bring about devastating damage to them. For hundreds of years, many half-emperors had died in order to compete for the Void Lightning Pool invitation. Therefore, under normal circumstances, as long as one was able to obtain a Lightning Pool invitation, almost everyone would carefully store it away. Until the Void Lightning Pool invitation was opened, no one would know who had the Lightning Pool invitation. Yet, Xiao Yan was currently going against the flow. Not only did he act in an overbearing manner, but he had also controlled a couple of empty realm Lightning Pool invitation in front of the eyes of a countless number of experts. He was basically inviting trouble to himself. However, when many people wanted to wait for someone to look for Xiao Yan, the ancient wildlands were unusually quiet. They were not interested in the Lightning Pool invitation in Xiao Yan's hands at all. Xiao Yan to Xiao Yan's Lightning Pool invitation. It was to you Xiao Yan's not to speak to him. 2. Bang! Following a loud bang, the mysterious gold armrest beside Mu Han in the hall suddenly exploded. His shriveled hand was deeply embedded in it. Under his hand, the mysterious gold, which was usually incomparably hard, was like a piece of dirt. Bastard! That brat is actually doing well. Don't tell me that those clans no longer want the Lightning Pool invitation in his hands. Mu Han's old face was as gloomy as water at this moment. The fury in his eyes was on the verge of bursting out. His hand, which was embedded in the armrest, clawed furiously. The hard mysterious gold was crushed into pieces like tofu. When he saw that the person who killed his disciple was living such a peaceful life, the fury in Mu Han's heart was almost uncontrollable. Wu Mahui was not only his disciple, he was also the grandson of his old friend who had already passed away. Because of his old friend, Mu Han loved his disciple very much. Moreover, Wu Mahui was also quite talented in the Tao of formations. Hence, Mu Han valued Wu Mahui even more. Now that Wu Mahui was dead, not only did Mu Han lose an extremely talented disciple, he was also unable to explain himself to his old friend who had already passed away. However, even though he knew that the person who killed Wu Mahui was Xiao Yan, he could only watch as Xiao Yan did whatever he wanted in this savage ancient city. The fury and murderous intent in Mu Han's heart had reached its peak. Yin Xiao, if I don't kill you, I won't be able to face my old friend in the netherworld. More so, I won't be able to face my disciple who was killed by you. Mahui. Mu Han's eyes were scarlet. Due to the extreme fury in his heart, his eyeballs appeared extremely protruding at this moment. Coupled with the scarlet color of blood, it caused one to tremble with fear. When they heard Mu Han's bone-chilling words, MOD and the rest unknowingly exchanged glances. Each of them had their own plans in their hearts. Indeed, I didn't expect Yin Xiao to have such means. However, that's all there is to it. Humph. When the time comes, as long as he enters the Void Lightning Pool, we will naturally make him pay the price that he deserves. MOD narrowed his old eyes. A cold light flickered in his eyes. When he thought of Xiao Yan, he gritted his teeth in anger. However, it was fortunate that he had people like Yan Bing by his side. MOD felt that he had to obtain Xiao Yan at all costs. Although Xiao Yan was still alive, he was no different from a dead person in MOD's heart. Humph. If it wasn't for Elder Luo, even if the pavilion master of the Yunin Pavilion was personally protecting him, I would definitely kill him in this savage ancient city. Mu Han naturally knew that MOD was trying to flatter him. He forcefully suppressed the fury in his heart, narrowed his eyes and said in a low voice. Yan Bing and the rest looked at each other and remained silent. As for how they understood the conversation between the two, no one knew. However, Just as MOD was continuously flattering Muhan in an attempt to deepen the relationship between the two of them, Muhan's eyes rotated. The corners of his mouth immediately revealed a mysterious half-smile. When he looked at MOD, his eyes revealed a gaze as though he wanted to devour a person. Kikik. I have almost forgotten that I am still lacking one item in order to kill Yin Xiao. Oh. MOD's eyes suddenly shrunk when Muhan said these words. Yan Bing and the other two seated beside him also raised their eyebrows. They were astonished in their hearts. With Muhan's strength as a 9-star half-martial emperor, killing Xiaoyan was as easy as blowing off dust. However, at this moment, how could he still say that he was still lacking one item? Could it be that Muhan was still not confident that he could kill Xiaoyan? Teacher Muyu, Kikik. MOD, I'm afraid that you have forgotten or overlooked an extremely important item. Just as MOD was about to open his mouth to ask, Muhan stared at MOD with a fake smile. His eyes narrowed as he spoke in a teasing tone. MOD was even more confused when he heard these words. He once again looked at Yan Bing and the other two seated beside him. The few of them were extremely confused in their hearts. Currently, they were all prepared and only lacked one thing. They only needed to wait for the lightning pool to open and enter the void lightning pool. At that time, Xiaoyan would die. However, no matter how they thought about it, they did not seem to have missed out on anything important. It's the void lightning pool invitation. After a long while, Yan Bing seemed to have suddenly thought of something and spoke to Muhan in an indifferent tone. As a 9-star half-martial emperor, it was very difficult for Muhan to rely on external items to increase his strength. Thus, he had not come into contact with something like the Void Lightning Pool invitation for a very long time. Now that he was about to enter the Void Lightning Pool again, this was the only thing he needed. Kikik, that's right. This old man has not entered the Void Lightning Pool for several hundred years. This old man has almost forgotten what the Void Lightning Pool invitation looks like. Thus, as long as MOD can help me find the Void Lightning Pool invitation, this old man will be able to enter the Void Lightning Pool. Hearing these words, MOD immediately frowned. The Void Lightning Pool invitation was very rare. Back then, in order to help Zhang Hao obtain the Void Lightning Pool invitation, MOD had paid a great price. Currently, the people who could control the Void Lightning Pool invitation were the leaders of various powers. Even MOD would not easily become enemies with such people. Given the current situation, where was he supposed to find the Void Lightning Pool invitation? Muhan's actions were simply deliberately making things difficult for MOD. However, in the next moment, MOD thought of the only person who could obtain the Void Lightning Pool invitation. However, if that was the case, Muhan, you are deliberately making things difficult for this old man. Currently, the only place where he could help Muhan obtain the Void Lightning Pool invitation was the Void Lightning Pool invitation auction that was going to be held by Yin Xiao in 10 days at the Heavenly Cloud Auction House. Chapter 274. When the first rays of the morning sun scattered across the land, the continent, which had been silent for an entire night, was once again bustling with noise. On a mountain peak outside the ancient savage city, two figures, who were seated opposite each other, opened their eyes at the same time. Immediately, two invisible pillars shot out from their pitch-black eyes and collided in the air between them, emitting a muffled bang sound. The corners of Xiaoyan's mouth lifted into a faint smile. He did not dare to relax during these 10 days. He had been continuously trying to adjust to the discomfort brought about by the increase in the sky extinction steps. 10 days passed. Today was the day that Xiaoyan had announced that he would be holding an auction. As the organizer of this auction, Xiaoyan naturally could not be absent. With a casual wave of his hand, the incarnation in front of him scattered with the wind. After a long period of tempering, in addition to Xiaoyan's current spiritual strength, this incarnation's strength had reached the level of an intermediate 1-star half-martial emperor. Although there was still a gap between it and a 2-star half-martial emperor, this was already a pretty good growth for an incarnation that could not cultivate on its own. Xiaoyan slowly stood up and stretched his body. As his body moved, Xiaoyan could even clearly hear the sounds of his bones colliding with each other. The clear sounds caused Xiaoyan to feel extremely comfortable in his heart. It had been a long time since he had experienced such a feeling. Hee hee, brat. given the void lightning pool invitation that you currently possess, if you were to sell all of them, I'm afraid that you would be able to make quite a fortune. Gu Yu, who had been silent in Xiao Yan's body, suddenly spoke in a mocking tone at this moment. Why? Is old Gu also interested in the void lightning pool invitation? Why don't I sell one to you? Xiao Yan chuckled when he heard this. A treacherous smile appeared on his face. His tone was filled with ill intentions. Gu Yu curled his lips and rolled his eyes at Xiao Yan in his heart. Immediately he changed his tone and laughed. Little brat, you are trying to fool me. Stinking brat, you're actually trying to trick this old man. All right, let's go. When the time comes, you'll be happy. Xiao Yan smiled embarrassedly and withdrew his thoughts. He lifted his gaze and looked at the blurry outline of the city at the end of his sight. Today, the ancient city of savage desolation was much more lively than usual. The streets that were already filled with people were even more crowded today. This was especially true outside the Heavenly Cloud auction house, which was located at the center of the city. At this moment, there was a sea of people. Although it was still early, it was even more lively than the noontime of an ordinary city. Needless to say, most of these people were here for Xiao Yan's void lightning pool invitation. Even the armored guards maintaining order at the entrance of the auction house couldn't help but feel incomparably shocked when they saw this scene. Such an eye-catching scene had only appeared a few times in the past auctions. It was likely that the auction this time around would become the largest auction in the past 100 years, because of Xiao Yan. Whoosh! Outside the noisy auction hall, a sharp sound that was like an eagle's cry suddenly sounded out, and it attracted the attention of a large number of people below. The sound of rushing wind was transmitted, and a figure wearing a black robe instantly appeared at the entrance of the auction hall. Everyone's expression involuntarily changed when they saw this person. The armored guards at the entrance hurriedly stopped the words that they were about to spit out when they saw the person who had arrived. Their expressions changed, and they cupped their hands respectfully towards the black-robed figure in front of them. Greetings to Elder Yan Xiao. With Xiao Yan's current reputation, most of the people in the ancient savage city had seen his face. The people around Xiao Yan were naturally no exception. These two armored guards at the entrance had been personally instructed by the owner of the auction house to treat Xiao Yan with respect when they saw him. They were not allowed to show the slightest bit of disrespect. Xiao Yan nodded and smiled in response to the respectful attitude of the two in front of him. He knew that this was their job, and hence, he did not pay any more attention to them. The figure with his back facing the crowd slowly turned around. His gaze swept across the crowd in front of him. When he saw the heated gazes of the crowd in front of him, Xiao Yan also smiled slightly. He was extremely satisfied with this effect. Haha, thank you everyone for participating. I will be holding a lightning invitation auction at the Tianyan auction house. In this auction, I will be taking out 6 void lightning pool invitation. At that time, it will be up to everyone present to decide who these lightning invitation will end up in. Hua! Xiao Yan's words caused an uproar in the entire place. 6 void lightning pool invitation. These people originally thought that even if Xiao Yan had a bountiful harvest during those 5 days and had obtained a few lightning invitation, even if they added their own invitation, there would at most be 5. However, from the meaning of Xiao Yan's words at this moment, if he had already left 1 invitation for them, it meant that Xiao Yan actually had 7 void lightning pool invitation with him at this moment. 7 of them. This accounted for a quarter of the total number of void lightning pool invitation. It was really hard to imagine. The void lightning pool invitation was originally very difficult to find. However, at this moment, in the hands of the 3-star half-emperor in front of them, there were actually 7 of them. Ha 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 ha. Brother Yan Xiao has arrived quite early. This old man has already sensed your aura from afar. However, while everyone's hearts were feeling shocked because of Xiao Yan's lightning invitation, a thunder-like loud laughter was suddenly emitted from this place. When he heard this bold laughter, Xiao Yan also withdrew his gaze. He lifted his head towards the sky and also laughed loudly. Brother Song is not late. The timing is just right. I was just about to go in and prepare some things. Ha 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 ha. After Xiao Yan's voice sounded, a figure suddenly rushed out from the sky. The figure's feet suddenly stepped on the void, and a terrifying pressure immediately descended from the sky. At this moment, the faces of many people in the area instantly became grave. With a flash of light, the figure had already appeared beside Xiao Yan. The person who appeared was an old man with a head full of white hair. He had a square face and unibrow, which added a bit of domineering aura to him. A pair of turbid old eyes revealed an ancient feeling of vicissitudes of life. His old face was covered with wrinkles. At this moment, he was revealing a rough smile as he looked at Xiao Yan. The old man's name was Song Gang. He was the manager of the Heavenly Cloud Auction House branch in the ancient Savage City. In this ancient Savage City, he could be considered to be a rather famous person. Moreover, his strength was also not weak. He was on par with Gu Li and Elder Xian. He was an 8-star half-emperor expert. Seeing the absolute smile on Xiao Yan's face, the corner of Xiao Yan's mouth couldn't help but twitch. Immediately after, he hurriedly returned to normal. He cupped his hands towards the old man and said with a smile, "Haha, brother Song." Song Gang smiled and nodded. He ignored the fearful gazes of the people behind him and smiled towards Xiao Yan. "Hee, brother Yin Xiao, I heard it clearly just now. Previously, no matter how I asked you, you wouldn't say anything. I didn't expect that you actually have 7 Void Lightning Pool invitation. TSK. I don't know how many people will be jealous of you." Hearing this, Xiao Yan once again smiled. He cupped his hands and said, Brother Song is right. If I keep these things on me, sooner or later, it will be a disaster. It is precisely because of this that after I obtained them, I hurriedly asked brother to help me auction them." Hearing the flattery in Xiao Yan's words, Song Gang couldn't help but laugh out loud. Xiao Yan's words were quite useful to him. "Haha, okay, I won't say any more." In short, Brother Yin Xiao can be at ease and hand those things over to this old man. This old man guarantees that he will definitely sell them for a good price for Brother Yin Xiao. Hearing this, Xiao Yan once again cupped his hands and smiled towards Song Gang. His eyes narrowed as he said, "In that case, I will thank Brother Song in advance." In the face of this kind of unscrupulous merchant, Xiao Yan was naturally on guard. Even though Song Gang in front of him was quite good to him and his attitude towards Xiao Yan was also unusually warm, this also caused Xiao Yan to be even more cautious. "Aha. Old Song, looks like you have a good chat with little friend Yin Xiao. Ha ha ha." However, just as Xiao Yan's caution rose in his heart towards Song Gang, a bold laughter once again sounded from the horizon. When Xiao Yan heard that familiar voice, his eyebrows couldn't help but twitch. Hearing this voice, the person who had arrived was undoubtedly the Elder Xian of the Yunin Pavilion. And from the meaning of these words, Elder Xian seemed to have an unusual relationship with Song Gang. Xiao Yan immediately thought that it was no wonder Song Gang was so warm towards him. Could it be that it was all because of this Elder Xian who was about to arrive? Or could it be that behind him? Chapter 275. Old man, why are you purposely taking advantage of me? Before the person arrived, the vast voice resounded across the sky like thunder. After Song Gang heard it, he sneered coldly and raised his head to the sky as he reprimanded. When these words were said, not only Xiao Yan and the surrounding crowd, even Elder Xian, who had yet to arrive, could not help but raise his eyebrows. He could not help but wonder in his heart, where did these words come from? Old boy, stop pretending. You should also know that Brother Yin Zhao's full combat strength is not inferior to yours or mine. Therefore, even I call him brother. However, you insist on calling him little friend. Isn't this purposely taking advantage of me? When these words were said, the faces of everyone present were immediately stunned. They looked at each other. Although they wanted to sneer, they ultimately suppressed their laughter when they thought of the person who said these words. Only Xiao Yan, who was standing beside Song Gang at this moment, could not help but laugh out loud. He did not expect that Song Gang, who looked rather bold and unrestrained, would actually care so much about these trivial matters. In the sky, Elder Xian could not help but reveal an expression of not knowing whether to laugh or cry after hearing Song Gang's words. He was also rather helpless towards Song Gang. Why is this old man's character still like this? After so many years of managing the auction house alone, he still has not changed his character. Looks like there is no hope for him in this life. Elder Xian muttered in a low voice. He could not be bothered with Song Gang anymore. His gaze turned and looked at Luo Jin, who was beside him. The latter also looked over. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. After which, they gently shook their heads and flew down. As the two of them flew down, Song Gang below was still angrily spitting at Elder Xian. However, when he saw Luo Jin, who was behind Elder Xian, his mouth, which was continuously spitting like a machine gun, suddenly opened wider than an umbrella. The words in his mouth also came to an abrupt halt. Immediately, beads of cold sweat slowly dripped from Song Gang's forehead. Luo Jin, on the other hand, had a faint smile on his face as he looked at the former. He did not move at all. At this moment, Elder Xian couldn't help but laugh when he saw this scene. He looked at Song Gang as if he was looking at a child who had made a mistake. Seeing this, Xiaoyan could not help but raise his eyebrows in surprise. He looked at Luo Jin, who pursed his lips and smiled. He secretly transmitted a message to Xiaoyan. You can even subdue such a terrifying heavenly flame. I only took in a subordinate. What's there to be surprised about? Xiaoyan immediately laughed bitterly when he heard this. It was true that he had indeed obtained the heavenly flame. However, most of those heavenly flames of his were obtained by risking his life. Compared to Luo Jin, Xiaoyan had suffered far too much. Regarding this, Elder Xian also smiled helplessly. Others might not know, but he naturally knew. Although Song Gang appeared to be fearless all day long, and even contradicted Luo Jin when he spoke to him, it was Luo Jin who made him obedient. It was to the extent that Song Gang would feel fear and trepidation whenever he saw Luo Jin. This was also the main reason why he did not follow Luo Jin, and was instead managing the auction house. About that, Song Gang looked at Luo Jin. Those who didn't know would think that he was looking at Elder Xian. After all, not many people would pay much attention to the weak one-star half-martial emperor behind Elder Xian. Old Man Song. Song Gang was about to speak when Elder Xian narrowed his eyes and looked at Song Gang and shook his head slightly. As soon as Song Gang opened his mouth, Song Gang quickly reacted. He smiled embarrassedly and rubbed his hands together awkwardly. Then he was about to lead them into the auction house. However, an instant later, just as Song Gang was about to lead the few people into the auction house, the expressions of the few people present with sufficient strength suddenly changed. Their bodies turned, and their solemn gazes instantly shot towards the northern horizon. Elder Xian and the others looked solemn. Their eyes narrowed into a thin line as they stared at the northern sky. They could clearly sense that there was an extremely terrifying aura rapidly approaching them from that direction. As for Xiaoyan, whose spiritual energy had reached the late martial emperor realm, he naturally sensed the aura as well. Moreover, what he sensed was much more than what Elder Xian and the others could sense. The frightening spiritual strength moved with Xiaoyan's thought. In an instant, it covered over half of the savage ancient city. Under the cover of his spiritual strength, the couple of human figures in the northern sky were all reflected in Xiaoyan's eyes. There were a total of 4 people who had come this time around. Other than the old man leading the group, the remaining 3 were Mod, Yanbing, an old demon whom Xiaoyan had already met. Zhang Hao's figure was not among them. Perhaps due to his strength, Yanbing did not bring him along with her. Based on Xiaoyan's understanding of Mod and the other 2, they naturally did not attract much attention from Xiaoyan. However, when Xiaoyan's spiritual energy swept past the old man leading the group, his face suddenly became solemn. Under the perception of Xiaoyan's late martial emperor realm spiritual energy, the aura of the old man leading the group had reached an extremely terrifying level. That level was far beyond Elder Xian and the others. In fact, even Yanbing, who was beside him, was far inferior to him. This aura, this old man is a 9-star half-emperor. It was not that Xiaoyan had never seen a Do-Di expert before. Most of the Spirit Ginseng tribe in the Spirit Ginseng world were at this level. Therefore, Xiaoyan was familiar with the aura of a Do-Di expert. Although this old man's aura was terrifying, surpassing an 8-star half-emperor, it was still far from the level of a Do-Di. Therefore, Xiaoyan was certain that this old man was a 9-star half-emperor. Late martial emperor realm spiritual energy. I didn't expect that at such a young age, your attainments in the spiritual Tao would be so high. However, as if he had sensed Xiaoyan's spiritual energy probing, The old man turned his deep gaze toward Xiao Yan, who was at the entrance of the auction house below. Although they were far apart, the old man's gaze still fell on Xiao Yan. However, before he could finish his sentence, the old man suddenly let out a bone-chilling cold snort. At the same time, a terrifying spiritual storm that was many times stronger than Xiao Yan's spiritual energy suddenly swept across the sky and violently bombarded Xiao Yan's spiritual energy. Not good. Sensing this, Xiao Yan's face instantly turned pale with fright. With a thought, he tried to withdraw the spiritual energy that he had spread out. However, compared to Xiao Yan, the old man's speed was even more terrifying. Before Xiao Yan could react, the turbulent spiritual storm had already violently bombarded the spiritual energy that Xiao Yan had spread out. Bang! A low deep bang sound was emitted from the empty air. Xiao Yan's spiritual strength was also withdrawn into his body. However, his expression had also turned pale at this moment. His body shook and he involuntarily took a couple of steps back. Immediately, he was supported by Luo Jin, who had flashed over. Seeing that Xiao Yan's expression had instantly turned pale, a chill immediately flashed across Luo Jin's eyes. He turned his gaze and his icy cold gaze instantly looked toward the northern sky. At the edge of his sight, there was a group of people swiftly flying over. Chapter 276. At the entrance of the auction house, Song Gang and the others were looking at the northern horizon with grave expressions on their faces. They were looking at the blurry figures that were getting closer and closer. What is going on? Why is that old brat Mod together with him? The most important thing is, why did he come here? In the past, he was a person who never left his house. It was always others who went to look for him. When has he ever personally come out? Old Xian and Song Gang had grave expressions on their faces. One stared intently at Mod, while the other directed all the questions in his heart to the elder leading the group. Could this be Mod's doing? It is extremely possible. Earlier, I sensed two spiritual energies colliding in the sky, after which Yin Xiao was injured. He should have attacked Yin Xiao. However, it is hard to understand why he would attack Yin Xiao. Mod can't give him anything. The gazes of the two were focused on Mod's group that was getting closer and closer. They were continuously conversing in low voices. On the other side, Luo Jin, who was supporting Xiao Yan, frowned after hearing this. He said, "There is no need to think so much. It is fine as long as we know that they have come for Yin Xiao. This time around, Mod has really blown things out of proportion. They will inevitably play some tricks during the auction. When the time comes, pay attention. If there is a need, there is no need to be courteous with them." Understood. Luo Jin's indifferent voice caused the expressions on the faces of Song Gang and the other man to instantly turn serious. Although the person who had come was a 9-star half-martial emperor, with their experience, there was no need for them to fear him. Now that Luo Jin had spoken, they would naturally not fear him. "Ah, I was wondering who it was. So it is Teacher Mu. What is it? You have not cared about the matters of the world for many years. Now, you have become interested in the Void Lightning Pool invitation?" Seeing that the 4 people in the sky were about to descend, the crowd quickly moved and created a large empty space below the 4 people. What a joke. The 4 people before them were all influential people in the ancient city. Yen Bing and Old Monster, who were both 8-star half-martial emperors. How could they not give way? However, when everyone heard Song Gang's indifferent words, the doubtful gazes that were originally looking at the old man who was the leader of the 4 suddenly changed in the next moment. A deep fear swiftly gushed out from their eyes. In this ancient city, how many people didn't know the name of Master Mu? He was one of the 2 tyrants of the wildlands. Immediately, a commotion broke out in the already crowded crowd. Their eyes were filled with astonishment as they looked at Mod and the other 3. This was especially so when their gazes landed on Mu Han. Their hearts became incomparably solemn. When Mu Han heard Song Gang's words, he lifted his eyes slightly. His deep gaze was like a sharp sword as it shot towards the former. However, Song Gang remained unmoved in the face of this sharp gaze. He directly ignored it. Back then, Song Gang was someone who had even contradicted old Luo. Although there was some exaggeration in his words, the current Mu Han in front of him was at the very most able to cause him to feel some pressure. However, It was far from enough to suppress him with just his aura. Mu Han's old eyes immediately narrowed when he saw this. He had also heard about Song Gang's temper. His temper was extremely fiery, and there were very few people who could suppress him. However, hearing 100 times was not as good as seeing it with one's own eyes. Today, he was indeed as fearless as the rumors said. It is not up to you to say what I am interested in. Now, I only want to ask, when will the auction begin? Mu Han coldly laughed and asked Song Gang in a cold voice. His gaze looked towards the deathly pale Xiao Yan by the side. A cold smile flashed across the corner of his mouth while a startling killing intent flashed across his eyes. This happened in less than an instant. Naturally, the heavily injured Xiao Yan did not notice it. However, Luo Jin, who had noticed this, narrowed his eyes and looked at Song Gang. As his eyes flickered, a sinister dark light flashed across his eyes. Song Gang, who had been paying attention to Luo Jin, immediately understood. He coldly snorted and spoke to Mu Han again. Teacher Mu, there is indeed no need for me to ask you anything since you have come to participate in the auction. However, you have attacked and injured the organizer of the auction. I cannot ignore this matter. I do not like to be spied on by others. That brat only has himself to blame for my earlier attack. Mu Han coldly laughed in the face of Song Gang's sinister words. He did not seem to care at all. However, Mu Han quickly turned his gaze toward Xiao Yan and said with a slightly surprised tone, "However, he has also surprised me. He's just a 3-star half-martial emperor. Yet he's able to raise his soul to the late emperor realm. Although he's strong among ordinary half-martial emperors, it's better for him to keep it to himself." As a 9-star half-martial emperor, Mu Han possessed absolute strength to suppress others. Even though Song Gang had a fiery temper, it was not enough for him to fight against Mu Han. At this moment, Mu Han had the absolute right to speak. It was also because of this that Mu Han revealed a look of disdain toward Xiao Yan and the others. His strength was so great that he could crush anyone. Seeing this scene, a ball of anger immediately rose in Luo Jin's heart. He slightly loosened his hand that was supporting Xiao Yan, and was about to step forward. He and Xiao Yan hit it off. Although the two of them had not known each other for a long time, the friendship between the two of them was extremely deep. Now that Xiao Yan was in trouble, how could Luo Jin sit by and do nothing? Song Gang and Elder Xian had been constantly paying attention to Luo Jin. At this moment, when they saw that Luo Jin was about to step forward, their expressions changed slightly. They looked at each other, and finally fell silent. However, just as Luo Jin was about to step forward, Xiao Yan, who had just swallowed a medicinal pill and whose complexion had somewhat recovered, grabbed Luo Jin's arm. He gently shook his head and stopped Luo Jin's figure. Let him be. I also did not expect that his soul energy would be so terrifying. This result is indeed caused by my recklessness. As for him injuring me, Xiao Yan secretly transmitted his voice to Luo Jin. The latter gradually calmed down. However, there was still a sinister chill in his eyes that could not be erased when he looked at Mu Han. At the end of his words, Xiao Yan paused for a moment. He took a deep breath and narrowed his eyes as he stared at Mu Han. Only then did he say coldly in his heart, "In the future, I will definitely make you pay back in full." With a cold snort in his heart, Xiao Yan revealed a helpless smile on his face. He looked around and said in a weak voice, "Haha, I have indeed been reckless. I have indeed been too rash. However, since everyone is here, I believe that we should enter the auction house first." Cough cough. At this point, Xiao Yan could not help but cough violently for a while. Then, with a weak expression, he opened his mouth again and said with a smile, "After all, everyone here today is here for the auction. We can't let this small incident affect the progress of the auction." Haha, don't I say so? At the end of his words, Xiao Yan's gaze landed on Mod. His pair of blurry eyes were calm as if nothing had happened. Seeing this scene, even Song Gang and Elder Xian could not help but reveal a suspicious expression. From Xiao Yan's appearance, it did not seem like he was faking it. The expression of Luo Jin by his side was quietly changing repeatedly at this moment. His heart was extremely shocked by Xiao Yan by the side. Indeed, at this moment, no matter how one looked at it, Xiao Yan looked like he was heavily injured. Even the aura in his body was in a mess. However, no one knew that Xiao Yan's hand, which was holding Luo Jin's arm under his sleeve, was violently trembling.